They all thought I wouldn't make it. They all think that you're faking, but seeing ain't believing. I know now. I take all your stupid, burn it as my fuel, yeah. 'Cause we're running out of time, so I'm gonna make it mine.
The chosen one, I'm not the one to underestimate. I want the throne, I loan the crush obstruction, rush through barricades, levitate. Got it tatted on me, told them follow me. They see the vision, now it's 2020, clear as Tahoe laces, clear as day. No longer move around in fear, disarray. Pray you hear me like the winter wind against your window pane. Feel the bass, baby, soak it in and let it marinate. It's time to hustle, gotta muscle up and run through barricades, yeah. Obstruction, rush through barricades, levitate. Got it tatted on me, told them follow me. They see the vision, now it's 2020, clear as Tahoe laces, clear as day. No longer move around in fear, disarray. Pray you hear me like the winter wind against your window pane. Feel the bass, baby, soak it in and let it marinate. It's time to hustle, gotta muscle up and run through barricades, yeah.
I got their opinions, and I got mine. I used to care what you said about me. Now I ain't got the time. Taking on me, take a seat, it's okay. Start again, touch, see, but know me. Still about the love, nothing's changed. Yeah, I don't play that game.
It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and seeking human victims.
Even whispering through the room in the night, they're hunting for strength. Something sweats burning in my chest. Came to the bed, I've got voices in my head. 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 Here we stand till the end. When all the leaves are falling, I know that it's only you I can depend. So you said, remember all you said. But how you tried to hide, how you changed inside. From all the color, you see your darkness shines. Now I've gone, I'm undone, and far away from valleys that will keep me in the darkness of your sun. But I can't help but want you. But why'd you try to hide how you changed inside? From all the color, you see your darkness shines. See your darkness shines.
Bingham making the work. Squatic finally making some inroads here on behalf of.
Absolutely gets in the back. Shadows.
Oh my
Oh,
god. Hello?
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 Uh-oh.
Hello?
Blur? Hello?
I don't think there's time. They're not gonna get back in touch. Nobody's noticed. No.
33% to a bomb, but BDR sitting with 3 ultimates, 4 ultimates of their own. This next fight.
They can follow up a little bit of aggression. Oh, this protect could be used. I think this is everybody. He does.
The anti-nade came through, and as much as we saw, man, this is dirty. Oh,
The
no.
ulti and popping it on everyone. The long spawns and over.
Wow.
It looks like look at Killer Talks. Oh my god! With the triple. Could that be the difference? Finally coming out. Terrible. Try and take up the difference. Let's get it. Oh, here's a tip. Alright, what's up everybody and welcome back. We are on camera, I thought we were on camera, so my face again. Welcome back to the Pride Cup, our last game of the day, and it should be a doozy. My name is Sun Phoenix, as you guys are well aware by now, and I'm joined once again by Blur. Welcome back.
Hello, hello. Highest of stakes games coming up right now, as far as the Pride Cup goes at least, and should be a really interesting one considering what we've seen today.
Absolutely. So we've got Prideful Shifters versus the Grant Hindenburgs. Team does have Grant Hines on it, sorry, which is why the name is such. Unfortunately, not playing today, but we'll get into all of that in just a second. Before we do that, we just saw Pride Shifters play up against Need for Feed, and as we spoke about in that match, there are a lot of stakes because of the result of that match coming into this match. So this is Group B action. So Blur, why don't you explain to us a little bit the permutations that are about to unfold?
So with Group B, our layout is such in that the other team in the group that has won their 3 games is Need for Feed, the team that Prideful Shifters played and lost to earlier. It was a 3-2 series, very, very close. They're playing now, but they're 3-0, so they've already qualified for the semi-final stage. If they win this game, they qualify as first seed from their group. Mm-hmm. This match then is to determine who is going through alongside them. So in terms of permutations, if these two play out and Prideful Shifters win, Prideful Shifters will go through. If the Grant Hindenburgs win, then the Grant Hindenburgs will go through. So
it's not complicated.
It's very nice and simple. The only difference is that depending on who wins here, if Need for Feed loses, then one of these teams could end up first depending on map differential. Mm-hmm. Neither will end up first depending in our second kind of delineating factor, which is their head-to-head record, because both of these teams have lost to the into Need for Feed. It gets a little bit more complicated when we look at Group A, however, which I think I should hand off to you.
Oh, wow, that's rude. Oh, my God. Yeah, Group A, it's like a whole math equation. You got to be a PhD in computational mathematics to understand the permutations going on here. But I'll give you the basics. Basically, the potential exists for us to have a 3-way tie in Group A. So we've got our top team, Rebellious Teabaggers, haven't dropped the map so far, doing really well. In second place, we've got 7-11, I believe it is. Yeah, so we've got Lunatic Hello in second place. In third place, we've got 7-11, and in fourth place, we've got Angang. Now, all of those teams have a pretty reasonable chance of actually getting that second place spot. At the moment, of course, it is Lunatic Hello looking pretty good, but they're playing up against Angang, who is taking up that fourth spot. If Angang win that game, they end up on 2-2, which will tie them with Lunatic Hello. Currently, 7-11 are sitting on 2-2 themselves, and they're playing up against Rebellious Teabags. So if Rebellious Teabaggers keep their run of domination going, they're going to qualify in first place, and 7-11 will still be on 2-2. So that means we could have 3 teams on 2-2, and it comes down to map differential. And if there's a time map differential, it comes down to head-to-head. So in terms of head-to-head, Lunatic Hello have got the head-to-head advantage over 7-11. 7-11, or rather Angang, they'll have the head-to-head over Angang if they beat them, but it won't matter because they will have had that extra win. So a lot going on in Group A, but keep an eye on things. After the matches are finished this evening, we'll probably post to Twitter the teams that end up qualifying, and otherwise you can tune in tomorrow at 6 o'clock, I believe it is, or is it
6
5?
p.m. Yeah, 6. Is it 5 p.m.?
No. So we'll have our semi-final at 5 p.m. and you guys can see exactly who's in the running still. And that's Group A. I hope I covered that as clearly as possible, because that's some complicated stuff. But that is not what we're looking at right now. What we're looking at right now is Group B, and the permutation, as Blur ran us through, is very simple. Winner of this match qualifies for the semi-final. Loser watches the games tomorrow. So what do we have for lineups here? I'll set us off first, Blur. In terms of the Prideful Shifters, of course, we just saw this roster playing. We had Pretz, Trigger Happy, Little Clumsy, Terran Lord, EQZA. We started off with Fluffy, but Alibi took his rightful spot in the squad after map 2 in the last series. It's a lot of Rage Good Odyssey representation there. Alibi is the manager of Snorlax. And then we've got 2 members of our Overclocked Esports, aka 2XS squad, also in the form of Little Clumsy and EQZA. Pretz, stand-up performer from the last game, and of course Terran Lord as well. Little Clumsy, no slouch in his own right. So a couple of players to keep an eye on in terms of Prideful Shifters.
And on the side of the Grant Hindenburgs, we don't have the namesake of Grant Hines on the team. Instead, taking his place for this game is Lime Oras alongside Soul Eater on the DPS. Representation from Risen and Overtime, respectively, in this team specifically. Bubbles is the other Risen member in this team. It's not the Bubbles. There's 2 Bubbles in our community. One's on Overtime and one's on Risen. This is the Risen one. And Sully starting out our... Sully, an ex-2CP player, now starting out our trio of 2CP representation in this team. On Bubbles and Sully on tanks, Zlade and Vertigo on supports coming from 2CP. Vertigo an off-tank for 2CP, but has played support in the past. Zlade, a very, very well-known main support player in the local scene.
Very highly ranked as well, along with Sully. So this is one of those top-heavy teams where you've got a few superstars that could carry the team potentially. But ultimately, as we know by now, the teams are pretty balanced in terms of overall SR. So 2,800, 2,850 around for each of these teams. So jumping into our first map, which looks like it is going to be Busan Blur. We have a little bit of an idea of how Prideful Shifters want to play. But do you think the Grant Hindenburgs are going to be able to stand up to the might of the Prideful Shifters?
I think it's going to be interesting. I think it very much depends on how they adjust to having Lime Oros within their roster as compared to Grant Hines. As far as I'm familiar, they don't have the most compatible hero pools between each other. So Grant Hines tends towards a lot of the Widow, the Ashe, like long-range hit scan, nice spam, you know? Lime Oros, so far, as far as I've seen throughout this tournament and throughout my experience with his team, tends more towards the projectile DPS side of things. So I think it's a little bit of a gap for Prideful Shifters to exploit, as maybe they're not entirely comfortable on what their DPS picks are going to be just yet. But looking at what we're seeing from that, I'm expecting to see on the other end of their lineup, their front line, I'm expecting to see some highly aggressive tank play. Both Bubbles and Sully are incredibly aggressive tank players. I think Pretz and Trigger Happy are going to have to be ready for that today. I think it's going to be a little bit of a conflict of styles again, as what we saw in the previous game. But I think in this one, I think the team of Pretz and Trigger Happy, Prideful Shifters, is going to be the one that's going to be the more passive team between the two. So seeing how they compare to one another, seeing how the kind of interactions go between that and the incoherent DPS rosters and so on, I think will be quite interesting going forward into this game.
Yeah. Incompatible, maybe incoherent. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, I think should be an interesting matchup to see. We are just waiting for one player on the side of Prideful Shifters, and we will jump in. Okay, no. Terran Lord says we are ready to go, so we're about to jump in to our first map, which is going to be Busan. If we look back to the previous series where we saw Prideful Shifters, they looked super strong on Lijiang Tower. Actually, quite a dominant performance on that map, at least for 2 of those maps. So when it came to Busan for map 5, they really didn't look up to scratch. Need for Feed had their number by the time the series came to an end. So I wonder what color we're going to see out of Trigger Happy and the boys.
Yeah, it's a little bit surprising they ended up choosing this map, considering how poorly it went for them in their previous match. But you know, maybe they've just shaken off the cobwebs a little bit, shaken off the their kind of like apprehension. They're going to be going in and showing us what they can really do here. Starting on mecha base here, very brawl intensive space in these nice claustrophobic corridors. lends itself to really aggressive Rhine play. So I imagine we'll be seeing a little bit of that out of Sully and Bubbles, and a little bit of that out of Pretz and Trigger. And, as we're seeing here, that we're going for a very aggressive May Reaper brawl from the side of Prideful Shifters, but on the side of the Grant Hindenburgs, we're going for a little bit of a brawl bunker. Something that's going to play a little bit slower, try and waste the enemy team's time, try and force them to not be played comfortably when they engage on them, because they're not going to be able to follow in with the same healing and the same engagement that they would otherwise. So a little bit of a little bit different in the comps they're setting up here, but both comps are very, very strong and very, very viable, very, very on the same page. So how these two clash into each other will be very interesting to see.
Yeah, this is the closest thing to a mirror matchup we've actually had of the matches we've seen in the Pride Cup. Most of the time, we've been seeing quite different philosophies, and Pretz going to go down early there to Sully, the 2 CP main tank, taking first blood in this match so far. Terranord going to fire right back, though. He takes Bubbles down on the Reinhardt, so things are pretty even in this team fight to start off. Ooh, that's done. Lime Oros not going to be able to follow up that with a kill. Little Clumsy, in fact, he's going to get the return kill. Vertigo going down. The healing now pretty limited as Pretz rejoins the fray. It's going to make it very difficult for Grant Hindenburgs to actually win this one out. And yeah, Prideful Shifters stamped their authority on the first team fight. A couple of squats there to get us started from Terranord. And yeah, that's going to set the tone for the rest of this match, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a good first fight. It's a good exhibition of the type of style we're going to see from the Prideful Shifters in this playstyle. They're going to be wanting to get past those shields and brawl very, very aggressively into the team, not give them the time to poke out with that McCree and that Orisa that team's going to want.
Absolutely. Oh, charge. Not sure what's happening there. Bubbles on the low ground. Pretz needs to be careful here. I said a little bit, but Lord of Terrans again finding that first pick. Finds another now in the form of Sully. This Reaper, a problem for Grant Hindenburgs to deal with. Although with Pretz going down, maybe there's a chance for the Grant Hindenburgs to bring something back. But no, Lord of Terrans going to pick up that last kill again and secure more point % for the Prideful Shifters.
I mean, both Mays dropping very early out in that fight, and that's reflecting their ult charge. They're literally on par with one another. Elsewhere in the team, however, the Nano, the Nano coming up for the side of the Grant Hindenburgs will be quite relevant going forward here.
Oh, well, there's the problem, child. Doubt was Shatter committed to get rid of the pesky Reaper, and now they can move forward and try and get some more out of this. Goaless is committed. That Shatter looks enormous. Finds 2 at least. Can they get the follow-up? They do find the kill onto the May, and the May on the side of Prideful Shifters going to get the kill onto Lime Oros as well. So they're sitting pretty in this team fight. Are the boys in blue? Can they just clean things up here? That's Trigger Happy down though. Little Clumsy with a nice headshot. Going to take down Zlade, and that Death Blossom as Lord of Terrors rejoins the fights, finds the kill onto Sully. Bubbles gonna commit himself to the void, but not much time for the Grant Hindenburgs to rejoin the fray.
Yeah, looking now, it's just going to be a matter of who can touch points and what else they can get out. They need to get this Blizzard out, and on the side of the Prideful Shifters, they're going to be wanting to use this Blizzard to really to win this game.
Yeah, Blizzard, there it is, committed right on the front line. Not even going to use it for any value. Sully did manage to work his way around on that ball to get onto the point, and that's going to mean Grant Hindenburgs do have an opportunity to take this team fight. Oh, Bubbles frozen up. Oh, Terran frozen up and punched right into the wall. That's the Reaper out of the fight. That could be the opportunity that the Grant Hindenburgs need to secure themselves their first team fight of the match. The boop. Oh, make it a little bit difficult for Lime Oros to move around, but he did find the pick onto Trigger Happy, and I'm sure, yeah, with the help of Sully, find the pick onto Pretz and finally get themselves a bit of point %.
A little bit of unfortunate Blizzard usage there in that fight for the side of the Prideful Shifters, not really catching anything with it, and I would have thought they would have backed off to point knowing that Sully was on that Wrecking Ball, but they didn't. And now coming to this fight with the Nano and the Shadow online, you expect the side of the Grant Hindenburgs to really be able to hold this first fight out.
Oh, interesting decision. Yeah, Nano boosting the ball, but you can't argue with the results, at least the results of the team fight, as they get a couple of kills to open things out. A lot of ults committed though. They committed the Minefield, they committed the Shadow, and they committed the Nano boost. So not much in the tank for the following fights, but we're going to secure this team fight win at least.
And looking at the side of the Prideful Shifters here, they've opted to switch off the Lucio, switch onto an Ana here. A little bit of extra healing because they don't have anything they outwardly have to defend against out of the team comp from the Grant Hindenburgs right now.
Oh, Graviton committed here. There's a counter ulti, at least from the sound barrier. Ooh, Terran Lord finds the first pick. He finds another after the Death Blossom. Terran Lord on this Reaper, once again, a standout performer for the Prideful Shifters. Does he have anything more? Can he get any more kills to really push this one over the edge for the Prideful Shifters, or can the Grand Hindenburgs bring something back? This May, the center of attention right now, taken out in a matter of moments at the end of that ice block. Ooh, ultimate going to be used here by the Doomfist, going to make sure he can stay alive, and actually 2 kills, make that 3 now with the boop from Sully. Terran Lord still in the mix though, but the respawns have come through for the Grand Hindenburgs, and they've ticked up to 82% on the clock. The blue team will not be winning this team fight. Oh, and this is a big stagger. They really don't have time for this. The punch going to secure the kill. A great sleep from Vertigo setting it up, and the Grand Hindenburgs might actually have enough to win this map, Blur.
Yeah, and it's just a situation where we're seeing similar issues creep in that we saw in the previous game, where they're just not cleaning up fights quickly enough and wasting a lot of resources trying to do that.
Absolutely. Speaking of which, it's a Venn diagram now on the point as the Maze commit both ultis. First kill though, going the way of Lime Oros. That's a good start for the Grand Hindenburgs as they look to come back in this match, and with a quick follow-up, an explosion of kills. It's just the coalescing Moira left. EQZA hits the deck, and the Grand Hindenburgs from 0 to 100 bring that one back.
I mean, 0 to 100 is a good way of defining the way that round went, because it was just so quick. Just the such high octane gameplay that we've been seeing here, and so close at the end of it. But I think from the side of Prideful Shifters, they just need to get their heads in the right space. They're playing very, very messy Overwatch. They're not cleaning up their fights effectively. Their target focus is a little off. Despite having ult advantage and positional advantage in a lot of these fights, they're really not impressing right now. And going forward into the next stage of this game, they're going to really have to resolve this if they want to avoid repeating the result they had in the previous.
Absolutely. That said, they did get 99% on the clock, so not all in Grant Hines and Co.'s favor, in spirit, of course. Grant Hines not with us in this match, but his name will live on in his team, so gonna see how the team represents his memory. He's not dead, but you know what I'm saying. As the Prideful Shifters moving in now, they're playing into an interesting composition, a Ball and an Orisa on the side of the Grand Hindenburg. So we'll have to wait and see how they work this one out and how Prideful Shifters actually respond. Little Clumsy gets the stun onto Sully, but he's adaptive shield up. He's not going to take much damage, but who is going to take damage is Soul Eater on the front line. Once again, Prideful Shifters coming out of the gate swinging and pick up a quick triple kill on the front line, and they should be able to secure themselves a first point take. Oh, Lord of Terran needs to be careful. Yeah, he does actually end up going down. The Prideful Shifters will get the first point cap on Sanctuary here.
Yeah, a little stagger there on Slade to end it out, and I think that's a really good fight from the Prideful Shifters here. Coming out of this poke bunker here, or this poke brawl comp here, that really allows them to take a fight quite slowly, but also once they get into the close range of the Orisa that's the Grand Hindenburgs were running, like really kind of collapse on that and make her suffer. And Sully not really able to stem that tide, not able to disrupt enough in the way we saw Knoppies do in the previous game. So looking forward here, you're going to want to see a little bit more disruption from Sully and really like punishing that backline and forcing their front line a little bit back so that their front line gets more value.
He's trying his best here, Blur, but good counter play from the side of the Prideful Shifters, going to prevent him from getting too much value. In fact, they were the ones who took down Slade, so a pretty good start for the boys in blue. That said, the boys in red, Sully getting aggressive now. He commits the minefield, and he gets a nano boost to boot. Him and Vertigo working well together as teammates in tank, now teammates in support and tank. But Bubbles going to find the first pick onto Pretz. There is a duplicate coming up, but he didn't find anything. Little Clumsy, though. He gets a triple kill with their Deadeye combo perfectly with the Sigma. The point got flipped in the middle of that, but it's not going to tick up very far before it gets flipped right back.
And this rally is going to be the central part of this next fight, because for the Prideful Shifters, that was an expensive fight for them, using 4 ults to try and win that fight. Sully's switching off the Wrecking Ball now onto a Sigma himself, but the Deadeye, the Blizzard, and the Beat's going to be online for the side of the Grand Hindenburgs for the next round.
Yeah, a lot to work with your decent amount at least. They're not quite at those ultis, so a drawn-out staging phase might actually favor the Grand Hindenburgs a little bit and allow them just to tick over towards those ultimates. So we do see the Shadow up now, the Blizzard up now, but it's 88 on the clock here. They don't have much time to work with, and it's going to be, the longer it takes, the more frantic the next fight will be. Soul Eater with the Blizzard here. There's a nice anti-heal in the backline. The Shadow goes down, but doesn't seem to find anything as far as I can see. And it's Sully, in fact, who gets the kills. The point has been flipped in the meantime. I hear a Deadeye off as well, but it doesn't seem to have found anything. Little Clumsy did find the kill onto Pretz though just before. Oh, no, Pretz! That was the rude Vertigo. We need you. Sully could do nothing but watch as his main support was squished into the wall, and EQZA with that double kill might just have flipped the point back in the Prideful Shifters' favors. We spoke about how they struggle to clean up fights, but it seems that's now something that's afflicted the Grand Hindenburgs, Blur.
Yeah, and in this situation here, losing a couple of players early in the fight seems to be a bit of a problem, but they seem to be cleaning up this fight quite cleanly now, so avoid repeating what happened on Mecha Base.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. They are still messing around on the point here, are the Grand Hindenburgs. That is a minefield. That's not how you want to die. Basically, Sully killed himself there by giving the duplicate over to the Echo. Lord of Turns going to be thankful for the mines he was gifted, and that's going to secure the Prideful Shifters a retake here, bringing us up to 1-1.
And a lot of that was really clean fights, really clean ult management from the side of the Prideful Shifters. But on the side of the Grand Hindenburgs, it was very, very surprising to see their transitional comp last so long. They were on that Reinhardt Wrecking Ball style of comp for a very long time. Then they played Reinhardt Sigma for a little bit, but didn't do that long enough to build an ult because then they had to stall because it was at the end of the round. So a little bit surprising to see them give so much space and so much opportunity to the Prideful Shifters there. But coming into this next round here, a little bit of a stylistic switch up. They're playing a little bit of dive into one another, Echo on both sides. The only big difference being never mind, it's a Tracer and a Genji on the side of the Grand Hindenburgs and a Echo and Kree on the side of the Prideful Shifters, as well as the support lineup difference. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. One a very hard committing style dive, the other one more of a kind of, poke, wait for time, build up ults kind of dive.
Yeah, red team going to be playing very aggressive here with that Tracer Genji. And there's the first pick, there's the second pick, Lime Oros. That Cyber Ninja paying dividends here as he looks to pick up a couple more stragglers. That's a good start for the Grand Hindenburgs. They can move on towards point, and for the first time so far on this map, they're actually going to get the first cap.
Yeah, and it's a little bit surprising to be seeing a McCree play with this. The McCree, obviously a strong hero in his own right, but he's very vulnerable in dive, and he's very vulnerable against dive. So to see him against that Genji, a hero that's very good against hit scans in general, the development team have said multiple times that their design philosophy for Genji is to make him a hit scan count. So to see him played against that, probably the second most vulnerable hit scan against dive, played there is a little bit surprising.
Yeah, and we saw exactly how it plays out. This time, though, Little Clumsy getting the better of that trade. Lime Oros gonna have to rethink about how he approaches the next team fight, and he finds the second one in the form of Vertigo. So now the blue team 2 up here, courtesy of the McCree. I was gonna say something else, and I chose not to. All's late. Onto pick onto EQZA, not before he gets the kill onto the Winston. So this is a very messy fight, which favors the team currently in control of the point. Sully not able to touch. He's just gonna yeet himself off the map and make sure he can rejoin his team as quickly as possible.
I think seeing this double wrecking ball is the scariest and most chaotic thing I've seen in Overwatch in a while, and this is with playing comp games.
The mines expire when Echo's duplicate ends. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so coming into this next fight now, they've swapped up their Ana for a Moira now to make her less diveable, and they've got this Deadeye here, which could give them a nice opening into this fight.
Oh, Deadeye, here it is. Can they find Echo? No, he ends up getting reflected upon. I don't think he was tracking the Genji's position, and you heard the reflect come out, and it gets rid of him. Primal range now, Planet of the Apes is both monkeys getting a little bit angry here. Hopefully this is not what's happening in the voice comms as well, as these teams look to take the fight to each other. There's a sound barrier, or rather a Genji blade down, and the rally immediately interrupted. Not much value coming out of that ability, unfortunately, and a good job from Lyos to shut that down. Kills going both ways, but Trigger happy with the double kill with the mines, make that a quadruple kill with all of his abilities. Is gonna secure a team fight win for the Prideful Shifters here.
And Ultimate's coming left, right, and center in this team fight, and really both teams on very neutral ultimate banks, except for maybe the minefield coming out of Sully in this fight. You know, it was a very strong fight that ended up going into the favor of the Prideful Shifters, and with such an expensive fight, it's going to be really, really difficult for the Grant Hindenburgs to retake in this situation.
It is going to be very difficult, but they're coming on in now.
Ooh.
Picks going both ways, but it's Sully this time getting the better value out of the Wrecking Ball with that double kill. The Winston brought back to life courtesy of the Vertigo's Resurrection as Sully picks up his third kill of the team fight here. The Grant Hindenburgs in firm control of this team fight, but it's still ticking up for the Prideful Shifters. They need to clean up these kills, and it looks like they've done just that. The point will flip now at 97%.
And we've seen a couple of these one fights, these one fight win condition fights come out for the side of the Prideful Shifters, and it's just a matter of we don't know which way this is going to go. You know, even though they only need to win one, we've seen them struggle to really clean up these fights. So they've got good ults on the board. You know, they've got their minefield, they've got their duplicate, which is crucial. They just need to make sure they make something of it in this situation.
Yeah, here is the duplicate. It's Planet of the Apes for real this time. 3 monkeys on the field. One with the Primal Rage, though, and the Echo going to try and assert herself in this team fight. Oh, somebody off the point. No, not quite on that occasion. We did see a Pulse Bomb kill on the side. Oh, no, Vertigo pistol out. Gets rid of Little Clumsy on the McCree, making short work of the Cowboy. And Sully going to pick up more kills of his own. Pretz does have his ultimate, but they're going to try and pull back and look for another fight. They're so low on time. This is such a risky decision, and they might not have enough space to get back in here for the Prideful Shifters. After such a good start to this map, can they move on through? This High Noon sounds good. Yeah, hits one. That's Vertigo out of the game. Revenge for the pistol kill we saw just a moment ago. Pretz, Primal Rage up here, finally committing that ultimate. Blade as well used now. Can they find anything out of this? Lime Oros, is he the guy? Not at the moment, unfortunately. Trigger Happy gonna make short work of the Cyber Ninjas. Little Clumsy gets another pick onto Soul Eater. It was looking pretty bad for Prideful Shifters as they came into this team fight, a very scrappy team fight. They needed to win, but so far so good for the boys in blue. Can they just clean up? That's something they've been struggling with, not hitting the shots. Little Clumsy, but they are in control of the point now. Overtime in their favor. Can the Grant Hindenburgs get in and touch? Yes, they can. Oh, that boop, the whip shot is so low. The Genji, can he get in range? Not quite in range. The boop gets reflected, and that Genji's going to get away. But meanwhile, on the point, it's all blue in the kill feed, and Prideful Shifters will secure themselves the map win on Busan.
A lot of credit has to go to Pretz there. He knew that he could back off a little, make sure he didn't die, and then come in with that Primal Rage and make sure his team were able to get onto him in that last fight. Between that and the Deadeye from Little Clumsy to open up that fight by taking out Vertigo, you know, the side of Grant Hindenburgs were running a very, very low healing composition. They were running that Mercy Lucio. So losing that Mercy means that just having the Lucio on point really, really threatening to the team's ability to keep taking that fight and keep their viability on the point. As it went out there, they got the advantage in that fight, took out Slade, and then they were able to clean up really, really efficiently. So really, really well played there from the side of the Deepers there to really bring that fight back, bring that round back, and put themselves in a position to take the first, you know, strike the first blow in this important matchup.
Yeah, and it is very important to get that 1-0 lead, and we saw them do it so well against Need for Feed, but we saw it kind of unravel after that, and that's kind of the dynamic we've been seeing throughout the Pride Cup is one team might win one game, but it becomes a question of how the other team responds. I mean, that's true of Overwatch always, but in the Pride Cup, that seems to be so much more important is how you respond to the other team's plan and what they need to do. So let's ask that question, and looking at the Grant Hindenburgs, what are Prideful Shifters doing that Grant Hindenburgs need to be dealing with, or is it just a case of slight improvements? Because it seems like this is a very close game, so there's not much in it. So is it just a little bit of extra that Grant Hinds need to be doing, or is there something more complex at play here?
I think the fundamental consideration in this needs to be the ultimate economy that the teams are struggling. Because we saw it in the previous game with very conservative with their ults, knew what they wanted to do, planned out their fights, and went for it. The Grant Hindenburgs are going in using a lot of ults, and that's sometimes forcing more ults out of the Prideful Shifters. But at the end of the day, a lot of the economy looks to be leaning in the Prideful Shifters' favor, which gives them lots of ultimates, like lots of opportunities that they maybe shouldn't have. So looking forward here, maybe managing your ults a little bit better, but also expecting that the Prideful Shifters' performance is going to dip a little bit on these payload-centric maps, because they don't seem to be really strong on controlling these payload spaces, controlling the flow of these games where their objective isn't really static, very dynamic, very moving, very dependent on where and when you decide to fight it out. They seem to have been quite weak on that so far. So maybe I think that for this map they probably just keep it as they were. And if it's really not working, because it was very close, if it's really not working as they go through this map, then for map 3 you probably consider it and then go from there.
Yeah, we did see, as you say, the Prideful Shifters struggling with these dynamic points, these dynamic objectives, but I think that was a lot of, in part, also due to how well Need for Speed were playing around those objectives themselves. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Grant Hindenburgs can actually respond in the same way, get the same kind of value that Need for Speed were getting out of these kinds of points, and force the same kinds of mistakes out of the Prideful Shifters. It's going to be interesting to see if they can actually bring it to them here. And I wonder again if now they have some footage on the Prideful Shifters. I wonder if they watched through that game and actually came up with some ideas of how they were going to deal with what the Prideful Shifters were running against Need for Speed. Do you think that's something they did, or do you think that's reading a little bit too much into it?
I wouldn't be surprised if they'd watched the previous game, got a little bit of a sense of what the Prideful Shifters were doing and where their biggest weaknesses were. But coming forward further in this game, I would expect that the win cons of it's always easy to watch a team and be like, yeah, they're doing this wrong, let's just do this and counter it. But it's a little bit harder in game when you consider that all these teams are very well balanced, very even in the day. So seeing that coming forward into the King's Row map here, it's not always as easy as, oh, they're weak on this. We still have to beat them. We still, the Reinhardts still need to roll it out. The DPS still need to find those hits, and the healers still need to make sure they're getting that util out. And if they don't get that out, regardless of what the weakness of the other team is, they will lose. So I think for the Grant Hindenburgs, maybe they did watch it, and maybe they do have a sense of what this team is struggling with. But looking forward into this map, I think it's going to be way more important to see whether the Prideful Shifters have iterated on what they did in the previous, other than whether the Grant Hindenburgs watched it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Something else to note as well is that we're seeing a little bit of a different look out of the Prideful Shifters as well. Been seeing Terranor play a lot of that echo. We didn't see much of, if any of that, against Need for Speed. So that's a new wrinkle in their composition that the Grant Hindenburgs won't be that familiar with. So it's going to be interesting to see how, as the maps kind of roll along, how they respond to that echo, because it seemed like Terranor was getting a decent amount of value out of that hero in a way we haven't really seen in the Pride Cup so far.
Yeah, and it's actually surprising not to see so much Echo being played in the Pride Cup so far, considering how strong she has been in the meta of Overwatch in general recently. So going forward into this map, whether we see more of it or whether we see them return to more of an aggressive brawl style that they have been quite familiar with going in these games, it will have to be seen as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So King's Row up next. We spoke about dynamic compositions, and I always mention this is a map that the teams love. Everybody loves this map, and that's why it gets picked every time. Don't expect to see much Hollywood in the Pride Cup, ladies and gentlemen, because King's Row is a favorite of all the people. So we'll have to wait and see what the two teams end up running here. But you think this is going to end up favoring the Grant Hindenburgs just based on the weakness that we've seen from Prideful Shifters on this map type? Or do you think what we saw out of the Prideful Shifters should stand them in good stead on King's Row?
I think it depends on whether the Prideful Shifters have appropriately identified their mistake. The fact is they weren't taking good engages, they weren't grouping up properly, and they weren't getting that value as a result. So in this game, it's going to be very important to see whether or not they just have a little bit more discipline to group up, to down cart when they need to down cart, to regroup when they need to regroup. Because that'll be the defining factor to whether or not they're able to win this game, is are they able to adapt their win cons accordingly? And that's the challenge of payload maps. You have to adapt your win cons to where the payload is when you can engage. And giving yourself maximum opportunity to do that is really going to be what defines this game. I think they'll do well on the first point, and if they get a nice first point hold, they probably feel confident going into the second 2 points of this map. But if they struggle on the first point, if they're already losing very quickly here, then the second 2 points might be a little bit of a shaky one for them, and there might be a position where they start to be really nervous about their place on this map, considering how badly it went for them versus
Need for Feet.
Versus Need for Feet. Yes, that other team's name with the XXs and the edgy Instagram handle.
Exactly. Triple X 420 Need for Feed, etc., etc. So compositions are locked in here for the most part. We're seeing the 2XS special here, the Winston right on the side of the Grant Hindenburgs with the May and the McCree. On the other side, though, we see that Echo again, once again, out of Lord of Terrans, and they're running the double shield. This time, Pritz on the Reinhardt and Trigger Happy on that Sigma. So, quickly, Blur, before things start exploding here, which of these two rosters do you favor?
I favor the Sigma in this situation. It gives a lot of damage mitigation that the D.Va struggles to do over a long period of time, and being able to play a little bit slower with this poke-intensive DPS lineup means that they probably get an advantage in this fight.
Well, we'll have to see if that is how it plays out. Makes sense to me. Trigger Happy, or rather Bubbles, getting quite aggressive there on the D.Va. Needs to watch his HP. Not to get taken down too early on. This Brigitte getting quite aggressive on the front line. Now Sully doing the same. They get stunned up straight away. These Brigittes are making a big difference in this initial engagement so far. Oh, look, Clumsy gonna use this movement to get up on the high ground, actually using it to good advantage, but his teammates are dropping like flies on the front line. An explosive initiation from the blue team is gonna mean that the Grant Hindenburgs are gonna be, or rather from the red team, it's gonna mean that the Prideful Shifters are gonna be pushed back and have to think about how they're gonna defend the second phase.
I'm quite surprised to see them actually switching onto the D.Va mirror here. The Sigma mirror in general, I would assume would actually put them at a bigger advantage versus the D.Va, but in this situation here, they've chosen to switch to the D.Va to mirror what the Grant Hindenburgs are running. The only difference being the Echo, where the Grant Hindenburgs have a May. So the May, I think, going to be quite a defining factor here.
Ooh, that's a big shadow blur. Sully finds so many with that, but no follow-up. I think it was just a little bit out of range. His team wasn't quite ready to get on top of that self-destruct now. Over the top, Lord of Terrans has decided he wants to be a Swedish mechanic as he starts swinging away now on the Brigitte. He doesn't seem to find much value out of that, and now Duplicate does end without really much coming out of that, as again, the Prideful Shifters are pushed back by the Grant Hindenburgs.
Yeah, and I think in this situation here, we're seeing the value of the May here. It's allowing Sully and the side of the Grant Hindenburgs to really be nice and aggressive and get at the enemy team, where the rest of the Prideful Shifters are having to kite and really stay out of the fight for a long period of time.
Well, it didn't seem to play out that time, at least on that team fight, because the Prideful Shifters dominated the Grant Hindenburgs on that occasion. They did end up committing the Shatter and Little Clumsy's ultimate, but they've still got a few ultis in the bag, and the Grant Hindenburgs not looking a great deal better in terms of their own war chest.
Yeah, and I mean, looking into this fight here, the Blizzard has to be the one that we really consider to define this fight. You know, the Nano online could be defining, but it's very easily countered by putting that Deadeye up and making sure he can't push, or putting that Mails up and he gets frozen and killed anyway. Same thing with the Rally. So this Blizzard and how it's used is going to be very defining how this fight goes.
Yeah, eyes on the D.Va as well. Eating this could be a key part of winning this team fight. And Soul Eater needs to be careful that he doesn't let it get eaten. He does get the freeze and he has to force him to move back. So no eat on that. And a good value, good start here for the red team. The Grant Hindenburgs picking up 3 easy kills. No response from the Prideful Shifters just yet. Little Clumsy picks up a kill on the point, but as you can see, dealt with very quickly. And the cart's going to keep marching on. We just caught the end of that. Sully getting just absolutely pancaking Alibi on the front line.
Oh, and Sully going so far into the backline, absolutely securing his team the capture of point 2 of King's Row. And now with 4 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock, this next fight is going to be defining for the Prideful Shifters. They need to use some of these ults. They need to dip into this war chest and really start to swing this game into their favor. If they don't, then they're going to be playing a very, very long attack.
Well, there's Prideful Shifters. They start with a duplicate. He got slipped up and there was a self-destruct, but it didn't find any value. In fact, Lord of Terrans with a fire strike of his own, gonna get the kill onto Vertigo, and now moving forward, trying to build his way up towards the Shadow. The zoning ultimate from Little Clumsy, actually a decent value proposition as they get the kill onto Soul Eater. Lord of Terrans meets his end in the meanwhile, but it's not going to be too much of an issue as he's got enough teammates left, but maybe I spoke too soon. Trigger Happy was demeched and then removed by Lime Oros Deadeye. Vertigo getting aggressive onto EQZA, who was dropping low because of Lime Oros, actually gets that kill. So the Grand Hindenburgs might have enough left in the tank to start pushing forward. The rally gonna help in that endeavor as they move forward onto point now, swinging away Vertigo on this front line. She's a tank. She knows how it goes. This is where she's at home. She's moving forward alongside Sully. This is second nature to these players, but unfortunately nothing happening just yet. Patient play from both teams. The shadow comes down, finds a couple, and it looks like the blue team is the one with the advantage. No, as I say that, kills going in both directions. That said, with how the spawn advantage works here, you'd be feeling pretty good if you're the blue team. And yeah, little clumsy on the Prideful shift. He's going to be happy with picking himself up a double kill. This diva needs to get out of here. Are they going to take it down? No. Going to let it drop to a death. That's going to stop the momentum here for the Prideful shifters.
And that's a 2-minute fight nearly. That's really put the given the side of the Grand Hindenburgs a lot of space, and it's put the given the Prideful shifters a little bit of time to stabilize. A lot of ults going both ways, and defined very much by the end of that fight, where Bubbles actually stuck his Diva Bomb into the pit. Not what you want to see.
Yeah, not as planned, but speaking of as planned, that was a huge shot of Sully. So much value out of that. Gets rid of his opposite number straight off the bat. He is anti-healed up. There's damage coming through, but this kill's going in his favor here. Little Clumsy does commit the Deadeye and does find a kill. Terror Lord decides he'd like to see what an Earth Shadow hitting a wall looks like. But he gets another one up, and he gets much more value out of it that time. Who's the better main tank, Sully or the Hold on, baby. Let's see it. And that's going to be what secures the team fight for the Prideful shifters.
Oh, it seems very much in this team that Pretz plays the main tank, but Terran lands the stuns. And that was an incredible piece of duplicated Reinhardt there to simultaneously absolutely whiff his first Earth Shatter and then hit 2 massive Earth Shatters to absolutely clean up that fight and put his team in a really good position to take up the rest of this game. The Deadeye and the rally lost things online for the side of the Pride of the Grand Hindenburgs right now, and on the other side, you know, the Diva Bomb already coming through from Trigger, picking up that signature pick-off that he's so known for in this roster.
Yeah, but that one was as much up to Pretz as it was up to Trigger Happy, getting nice and aggressive and splitting the team up, giving Trigger Happy the space to find that kill with the self-destruct, and actually gets out of there with his life. So good play from the 2 Rage Quit Odyssey tanks here on the Prideful shifters.
And we're probably looking at a last fight situation here. Coming in here with the rally, you know, they're gonna have to come in quite aggressive, taking advantage of the fact that they have a way bigger ult bank right now. And another huge shadow coming out from Sully.
Shadow. Sully finds 4 with that one. That could spell the end of this map for the Prideful shifters. 2 picks found out. Could that be Terror Lord going down? No. Choosing to fan the hammer there. Maybe a bit of a mistake, but now he's putting the pressure onto Alibi. Not much left in the tank for the Prideful shifters, but the respawns will be coming through. Here we go. Adapter circuits again, this time choosing to go for the self-destruct, or the Diva rather. He gets a little bit of extra time, so maybe a smart decision here, because now he gets to remake and he gets to get demeked again. He might get a self-destruct up as well. He does. He throws it out now. Does it disappear when it ends? No, it doesn't. And he gets a double with the Terror Lord once again with the duplicate, making the big plays for the Prideful shifters and putting his team on the back. Now look, Kamzi coming back in on the McCree, gonna find himself a few more picks, and they are forcing Grand Hindenburgs back towards their spawn. Sully in the mix here still. He might actually be doing enough to allow the teammates to come back in after the pressure that the Prideful shifters put on them, but it looks like still in favor of the Prideful shifters, and they do end up securing the point. Man, Terror Lord is on fire today.
Yeah, if the tank's not going to do it, he's going to make that space. He's going to land those ultimates. Trigger Happy landed 1 pick, he landed 2. Come at him. He doesn't care. He knows what he's doing. Absolutely, like, excellent play from the Echo player of the Prideful shifters there, but also a really good play to initiate those fights and put themselves in a good position to take what was a really difficult situation and turn it into something that they can now potentially. They have a very clear win condition. That's 69 meters on point 2 of King's Row. It's as good as a full push, but it's not quite.
Nice.
But coming onto this, yeah. Yes, we know what number that is. Coming on to the other end of this side, though, we have to look at their street space and say that if the side of the Grand Hindenburgs are able to stall it out a little bit longer than the Prideful shifters were able to, You know, they give themselves a pretty good opportunity because Kings Row 3, it's not a given. A full push of Kings Row isn't a given, especially not with teams that aren't exactly, you know, fully synergistic yet. And especially considering the comp that we're seeing the Grant Hindenburgs come out with. This really, like, bunkered brawl, the slow, like, I don't know what, it's a very slow, it's a very kind of drawn out, not hard committal. You know, they're going to be playing very slow and waiting for the Prideful Shifters to initiate onto them. And from the side of the Prideful Shifters, they're playing a very poke-intensive brawl, which could be difficult to land the damage they need into this comp. So we'll see how it develops going forward through this match. But, you know, given that they have a win condition, they're already in a better position than they were in last match. So hopefully they can make something.
Hopefully they can. Prideful Shifters now moving on forward. You see Lime Oros here putting down a ton of damage. That Pret's about to drop down. Needs to not drop his shield, but he is going to survive just barely. They have dealt with the turret on the side of Grant Hindenburg, so not too bad of an initiation. But yeah, not really getting much out of this just yet. Time ticking away here. Still early days, it has to be said, but you're quite happy with how this fight's unfolding for the Grant Hindenburgs. And the Pret's going down off the bat there. The Diva soon to follow. Grant Hindenburg is going to be really happy with how long that fight took and the fact that it went in their favor as well.
And I think if you're looking at the side of the Prideful Shifters here, you're maybe considering switching that Echo back or that Sigma back in that we saw them start with at the beginning of this match. You know, it does offer them some extra poke. It does offer them a secondary shield, and that's maybe what they need in this situation to make sure that the Torb turrets and the numerous assets that the Grant Hindenburgs have don't have any effect.
That was an ambitious shadow from Pretz there. Nanoed up, doesn't find anything, gets taken down. So many ults committed there, 2 at least for the Prideful Shifters. Little Clumsy coming towards the Deadeye now, but he shouldn't commit it. Trigger Happy still in the mix here. Needs to be careful not to get Steam-mixed right at the end. Steam-mixed, that's a big problem. He's going to get taken down. He should have been staggered in my humble opinion. He should have been staggered. But unfortunately, the Prideful Shifters, more time ticking away here.
Yeah, and it's something that's, you know, it's those little individual mistakes creeping in again. We see Pret standing in front of the Baptiste amplification matrix and absolutely tanking all that damage, and he doesn't have the health pool to do that. He's just gonna die, and it's just a situation that they have to be a little bit smarter about their interactions here.
Oh, speaking about actions, Terror Lord in the backline gets what he's looking for and finds a charge through. Unfortunately, won't be able to get any shadows off this time. No triples for him on this occasion as he gets removed from the Reinhardt form, but he did buy a lot of space. But they didn't kill the Rhine. He gets taken down. There's a shadow on the front line, and all of a sudden, after what looked like a promising start for the Prideful Shifters, the Grant Hindenburgs crack back aggressively, and now we see the stagger. Thank you, stagger. Diva. There's a Diva in there, right? Yeah, she goes. Let her go. She gets.
I mean, it's only a stagger if she doesn't get her mech back, so she's going to be back before Little Clumsy is born, unfortunately.
Okay, we saw both extremes, Blair. We saw the stagger. We saw the opposite of this. Terran Lord going down there, though.
Really nice pick there from Lime Oros to close that, or to make that poke stage just a little bit more dangerous, and they really need to be considering what they're running as a comp here. They're losing a lot of resources so early in these team fights.
Yeah, Terno dying twice there. That's a good start. They get rid of the Bob. Trigger Happy. Name a more iconic duo. Gets rid of the Orisa. That might be the opening that Prideful Shifters need to move on through. Vertigo comes in and says, please kill me, Prez. I don't need to be alive anymore. And he does so. He obliges. What a nice guy as he moves back now and secures his team a team fight victory. What a strange sequence of events, Blair.
But I think if you're the side of the Grant Hindenburgs there, you'll be very happy with how that went. You know, it was a very slow way to lose a team fight or lose a point. They took 3.5 minutes to capture that, and with 3 minutes into the street space here, the area of the point of the map we expect the Prideful Shifters to actually be weaker on. We'll see how they adapt through here and really try and make this a little bit stronger for themselves. But it's a good position, I think, and especially with the ultimates they have online, I think they might be confident of taking a first fight here.
There it is, the first ultimate committed here. Oh, what Pretz, my dude? That's a risky play to take, but he doesn't end up paying for it. He doesn't get any pay dirt either, so no harm, no foul as it turns out as the team start to get aggressive now. Soul Eater throws down the molten core. The floor is lava, and Bubbles, he's not afraid of anything. As Little Clumsy commits the Deadeye here on the front line. Doesn't find the picks he's looking for, and in fact, Lord of Terrans goes down. He has switched over onto the Ash. He gets brought back to life, courtesy of EQZA, and he's going to look to get some more value out of the Ash. He's done a really good job charging his Bob, though, and he's going to have that almost ready to go here. In fact, he might have it up in a second. Bob comes out in the other direction, though, and now both teams committing ultis into this team fight. Pretz doesn't find anything with that Shatter. Shatter now the other way, also not finding anything. One of these Ryans needs to play Echo instead. It seems to be a much better way to get value out of your Earth Shatters, as Terga Happy finds a kill onto Bubbles, who's brought back to life. Again, these Mercies getting nice value out of their reses, keeping their teams all nice and healthy. Lime Oros, though, he's going to make sure Pretz gets the deck here, and probably permanently, because I don't think EQZA has the resurrection available anymore. And it looks like, oh, maybe not. I was about to say they're getting pushed back here on the side of Prideful Shifters, but that pick might open up the opportunity for the team to move forward again. A nice anti-heal and a follow-up from Lord of Terrans. Going to get that pick. 2 seconds left on the res for Vertigo, but she's not going to be in a position to get him back up. Soul Eater gonna have to walk back, use those little legs to the best of his ability. The Shadow goes down, and that finds so many. Pretz decides to put the nail in the coffin of this team fight. That was horrible phrasing, but you guys get what I'm saying. Little Clumsy picks up the triple at the end of that, and that's gonna secure the push for the Prideful Shifters.
And again, I think if you're sitting on the side of the Grant Hindenburgs here, you're happy with the amount of time you hold that for. You know, it might not have been a clean fight, it might not have been a win at the end of the day, but 2 minutes to defend point 3 of King's Row, the hardest one to attack. And I'd say you're looking at this and you're like, you know, I think we can defend this. I think we can hold this. We've got, you know, we've got our Molten Core and our Valkyrie online. We're gonna have our Bob, and off that we can build the rest. I think we're pretty happy going into these last sequence of fights, and from the Prideful Shifters, they're going to have to be quite impactful with the ultimates, all of which, you know, are vulnerable to the shielding capacity of the side of the Grant Hindenburgs.
Ooh, Trigger Happy tried to combo with the Pretz there on the Rhino. That was seen to do so well so far, but not finding anything. Oof. It's the DPS, though, contributing now. Terror Lord finding a double kill with the robot assistant. Soul Eater gets a return kill. No, it's just onto the Bob, which is, he did his job. He got the double that he needed to, and now he's gonna retreat back into whatever void he comes from in the first place. Little Clumsy gonna pick himself up another. The 2 DPS not being dealt with on the side of Prideful Shifters, and Grant Hindenburgs being stuffed back into their spawn. Bubble, Sully, and Co need to get out, and Sully has done just that. He's buying a little bit of space to get his team out of their spawn, and the kills coming out in both directions. But again, Pretz with a huge ulti, but that lamp buys his team enough time to get back up and get healed up. Little Clumsy gets rid of Lime Oros's Bob, but Lime Oros gonna use the coach gun itself to get rid of Alibi in turn. So kills going in both directions here. And Little Clumsy finds a kill onto Soul Eater as well. He needs to be careful. HP dropping. EQZA gonna back him up here as Bubbles with the Earth Shatter. Ambitious to say the least. That shield needs to be dealt with before you throw that out. Maybe you should ask Terror Lord for assistance there on how to use the Earth Shatter, because he knows what he's doing. Little Clumsy does have the data, but clock is ticking down here. 15 seconds left. Looks like we're just gonna have a restabilization here moment.
And looking at this, you're probably going to see either Bob or Trigger Happy getting onto point to stall it out on this last little stage here, because they haven't used their time bank well here.
Oh, Bob, he did get onto point and touch, but kills going in both directions here. It's going to take something special for the Prideful Shifters to pull this one out, or are the Grant Hindenburgs going to equalize the series? Trigger Happy, we're going to need something normal out of him, and that's a good start. Getting rid of Soul Eater is a great way to open up the bank here, open up an opportunity for the Prideful Shifters to actually win this one out, but the spawns are so much better for the Grant Hindenburgs, unfortunately, but no kills really coming out. Bringing Soul Eater back to life is a good start for the team in red. Sally finds a pick, and suddenly a flurry of kills. Bob executing 2, both DPS in fact, and a support on the side. Bubbles lands a shatter, and it looks like the Grant Hindenburgs, after a drawn-out team fight, are going to secure the map win on King's Row.
And I mean, we talked about at the beginning of this game how the Prideful Shifters struggled to adapt to mobile win cons of a payload, and we saw that on the first 2. Again, once they got pushed back up against the wall and they didn't have the chance of whether or not the payload was moving, it was just if it moved they lost. then, then they started to play. But in that first kind of stage where they'd lost their first fight, they'd put themselves at a disadvantage, they got into a position where they didn't want to. They wouldn't want to be sitting with 5.5 minutes or 4.5 minutes coming into stage 3 of King's Row, and it's just a mismanagement of the payload resource. That's really putting them at a disadvantage. And the more time they give for the Grant Hindenburgs to find chinks in their armor, to find little things that they can exploit and take advantage of, we might see another similar situation that we saw from Need for Feed, where we saw them lose their first control map but win their second one, because by the time they got to the second one, they knew exactly the style they had to play to dismantle the Prideful Shifter. So
far, history repeating itself here.
Yeah, looking into the next map here, we're really going to want to see the Prideful Shifters start to turn this around. They have to play a little bit more consistently when the payload is moving. They have to play a little smarter when they're sitting on a moving payload. They need to die on the payload so they get a second fight. They need to make sure their ultimates are used in a position that benefits them. They need to make sure they're not throwing fire strikes into the enemy Baptiste window, because when they do, they get killed. When they make those mistakes, they die. And then they lose points off that. And then they end up with 4.5 minutes to defend a last point and 20 seconds to try and get a last fight.
Yeah. Looking pretty tough on King's Row, but like you said, history repeating itself here for the Prideful Shifters. At least we won't have exactly the same map here for their third map. It will be Dorado, but the same kind of problems exist on this map as exist on King's Row, especially when it comes to that dynamic wind condition, as you've been mentioning, Blur. So the Prideful Shifters falling into the same traps that they fell into before, but let's look at the Grant Hindenburgs doing a really good job on that map of making sure they put the Prideful Shifters under the same kind of pressure that Need for Feed did, and they actually ended up taking the map. So one apiece here, Blur. We saw how they struggled, the Prideful Shifters, on King's Row. Do you think we're in for an even map here, or do you think we're looking at it being favored towards the Grant Hindenburgs?
I think if the Grant Hindenburgs keep playing that the way that they have been, where when they're on the defense, they play really slow, really deliberate, really play out their win cons, that it doesn't matter whether they win them a minute or 3 into a fight. I think they put themselves in a really good position to win this game. But comparatively, the Prideful Shifters, it depends on whether or not they're able to counter the aggression that... If they can counter the aggression that the Grant Hindenburgs are showing on the attack, they're going to have a good advantage. Or a good position. If they don't, then they're going to end up with another huge time back. Because there's a very distinct stylistic shift that we're seeing. That when the Prideful Shifters, or when the Prideful Shifters are on the defense, the enemy team is playing very aggressive. When the Prideful Shifters are on the attack, they're playing super, super passive and waiting for the Prideful Shifters to make mistakes. And the Prideful Shifters have obliged to this point. They've struggled when the team has put pressure on them, and they've struggled when the enemy team has given them time to make their own mistakes. So, that's really much what we're going to be seeing a little bit in this map. And in this map, we're seeing a dive mirror, actually. The Diva coming out from the side of the Prideful Shifters, and the Wrecking Ball from the side of the Grant Hindenburgs, with a Mercy Lucio. Horrible support combo. Please don't play this in your comp games. Your tanks will hate you.
We'll have to wait and see if their tanks do end up hating them here. Sally, not quite getting around, but they do find the pick onto Alibi here. So far, the support combo, not the worst of situations just yet, but maybe I'm speaking too soon. But they do get the res onto Bubble, so he's going to be able to join up with Sally here and put pressure on the backline. Little clumsy on this Genji, not finding the angle that he's looking for, not really able to find the targets he wants to. I mean, you don't really want to be focusing on Lucio, and now he's under pressure from the Winston, and Lucio, in fact, going to put him down at the end of the day with a headshot from the Sound Blaster. So far, so good for the Grant Hindenburgs here. They are getting a lot of push forward. Is Lade going to take a brief nap here? He's not even going to die, is he? He's getting pressured by the Winston, but doesn't get taken down. Trigger Happy pushing forward, gets the punch onto Bubbles and gets that kill. But looks like the blue team really losing a lot of players here, a lot of their HP dropping, and the Grant Hindenburgs pushing forward. They haven't really been stopped or slowed down. Most of the fighting has been happening away from the point, and looks like they're just going to get what looks like a free cap on first point, Blur.
Oh, and this is an awful position for the Prideful Shifters to be in now. They've just captured first point, already they're getting picks, already they've committed halfway through the second point, because they know they're struggling to adapt to what happens when the payload is moving. There's a definite split here where the Prideful Shifters are trying to dive onto the payload, trying to stop the payload moving, trying to get that fight, trying to get that going. But while they're doing that, they're not taking the fight. The fight is happening behind them. It's happening on their supports. It's happening on their DPS. You know, and I think it's a stylistic shift we need to see from the tanks to play the team fight before the objective, because the win condition is still the win condition if it's 20 meters further forward.
Lord Terrence here, Planet of the Apes once again on the duplicate. He's going to get a little bit of time with the Primal Rage, but not quite the full duration. But he is going to force the Grant Hindenburgs back, actually, and that kind of disruption is good for stopping the momentum that was beginning to build up for the team in red here. Ultimate coming out, though, for the Genji here of Lime Oros. He gets the kill, he gets the D-Mech, rather, onto Trigger Happy's mech, so no shenanigans out of the Diva player there, and all red in the kill feed now. Grant Hindenburg, suddenly, an explosion of kills, going to keep their momentum going here after a brief moment of being pushed back. Soul Eater has his duplicate up here on the Echo, so might be looking to use that in the next team fight.
And I think you have to look, if you're the Prideful Shifters, at what your team comp is doing and what you're struggling on. Are you getting value out of this Genji on 2 supports that aren't really that diveable, and 2 DPS that also aren't really that diveable? Are you getting value diving the payload like you are? Are you getting value from the Brig getting focused out of the fight so easily? Are you getting value from the Ana? And all those things I need to consider in terms of making a better commitment playstyle.
Or, speaking of which, Nano Boost here, Nano Blade rather, coming through, but the Sound Barrier doing a good job countering it out. We see Soul Eater choosing to go for a self-destruct of his own, doesn't find anything just yet, but all in the kill feed, and again, these team fights are taking so long, but the card is not being contested properly, and the Grant Hindenburgs are going to grab themselves a second point and secure themselves almost 5 minutes to cap the last point.
And I've criticized the tanks of the Prideful Shifters for overcommitting to the point at times. But when it's in these situations where it's 22 meters before the cap, you can't be not dying on payload. If you're dying 20 seconds after that fight, you're just letting them get some free push. It's just this kind of mentality of individual mistakes that's creeping in, and I don't know, are they getting nervous? Are they struggling with, feeling like they're not getting what they want to accomplish out? That's what it seems like, because they're all in different positions doing different things, and it's like, it seems like their structure is starting to crumble.
It does seem like that is a definite possibility here, so we're going to have to see if they can clean that up. But on the point, meanwhile, they are putting a little bit of pressure on, and they do find the kill onto Sully. Now Pret's getting very aggressive. He finds the pin onto Slade. Couldn't even see the Lucio behind the burly frame of the German Knight, and it looks like that's going to be enough to finally secure them a teamfight victory here, which seems like it's been few and far between on Dorado so far.
Yeah, so it seems like it is. It seems like there is their first teamfight victory. They got picks, they got pressure, but the situation they end up pushing themselves into is one that, they still have 3.5 minutes. There was 4:49 on the clock when these doors opened, and it's still a really long time to hold, especially with a Genji Blade coming out and no defensive ult on the side of your team. So they're gonna have to play this so carefully and so perfectly to make sure that the Grant Hindenburgs aren't able to get into a position that really challenges them going forward.
And this Genji Blade here from Lime Oros could be the can open and the cracks through this defense of the Prideful Shifters. Trigger Happy taking a nap here. He committed his ulti as well, I think. Yeah, he did. So he's not even going to get anything out of that. More issues for the tanks here as the Sound Barrier comes out. That deflect going to secure the kill onto Little Clumsy now. So Grant Hindenburg's in the driver's seat as Lime Oros commits his ulti, finds a kill on the Torbjorn with a little bit of help from his Ana Vertigo, helping the DPS secure a couple of kills here. But so far, the Grant Hindenburg's uncontested significantly here. Slade finds a kill on the enemy support, and they find anything more. Finally, Little Clumsy gonna strike back here, and Pretz does it in the same time, and Little Clumsy, uncontested, finds himself a quick 3k. Pretz gonna help him with a double of his own, and after a difficult start to that team fight, the Prideful Shifters come out of spawn swinging.
You have to be asking them, how many times can the Prideful Shifters do this? It's an ult that clutches it at the end. It's a pin out of nowhere that clutches it. It's, always some little factor, some unpredictable factor. They're not winning these team fights based on a structure they're playing. They're winning it based on the fact that their spawns are really close and they're able to get weird and wonderful picks from out of nowhere. So it's something that they really have to consider for the rest of this game, because they're in a position where the playstyle that they're adopting here is unsustainable, and EQZA already dropping early in the fight, poking too high.
Well, they did get a pick of their own, so it is even fight, and that aggressive ultimate from Bubbles, or Sully rather, not going to find anything. It's a pretty good start for the Prideful Shifters here now. Swinging away is Pretz on the front line. Molten Core committed, a lot of it getting eaten up by Bubbles on that Sigma, but he does end up going down, and they are getting aggressive now. So this is another stabilization here. Only a minute left on the clock, Blur, so a pretty decent defense on third point at least.
Yeah, and again, it's a rhythm. They're playing on a very static corner. They know that they play on this corner, and if they get pushed from the top, they cycle back. They don't have an option. That's the only thing they can do, and they're doing it well. The issue isn't this team's ability to take fights. It's their inability to take fights when they have a second thing that they're focusing on. And it's maybe the singular focus that they're struggling with, but also that makes them strong in these team fights.
Absolutely. They know when they have a condition to play around, they know exactly how to execute on that. And you can see Little Clumsy at the beginning of every fight, getting these picks that they need, just buying them little bits of extra time. And that 4.5 minutes that they started with, already down to 30 seconds. Is Trigger Happy needs to be careful not to get taken down on the front line here. But yeah, much better defense here.
Yeah, and you see the side of Prideful Shifters not falling into the posturing of the Grant Hindenburgs there, trying to bait them into Bubbles' Gravitic Flux.
Oh, yes, indeedy. That's a good shadow. The charge goes through. I think he's got it. Lucio again's lane, falling to Prince once again. Nobody on the point for the Grant Hindenburgs, but I think that team fight was pretty well in the Prideful Shifters' favor. So, after a difficult start, a slow start for the Prideful Shifters, they find their footing right at the end of Dorado.
And I think if we're looking at what they have to do to achieve a victory here, they need to make sure they're winning fights faster. I think, they need to be leaning into high commitment DPS, things like Farah, things like an Ashe, things that really are going to put a lot of damage down and put a lot of spam into the enemy team. Even something like a Junkrat, if they have the advantage to do that, I think probably on this map that's a little bit inadvisable because of the amount of high ground he'd have to bridge. But definitely a Farah would be something achievable. An Ashe would be something quite achievable. If they're going to be playing dive, they need to be making sure that they're doing it consistently. A Hanzo's a good pick for this as well, but I'm not sure about the Torbjorn here. Because the Torbjorn plays into a very defensive playstyle, and unfortunately the thing that they've been struggling against, as I say that, they switched to a Farah, but the thing they've been struggling with a lot of this game has been time banks. A lot of this match has been time banks, has been the amount of time they have left. We saw it happen on Busan Mecha Base, where, they kept coming in, they kept plodding along, and eventually they just weren't able to, they didn't have enough time to make the advantages they'd built up early in the game count. On King's Row, they didn't have enough time to capture the point at the end because they'd spent so much of it taking point 1 and 2. So into the map 3 now, we need to make sure that they're able to take point 1 quickly enough that they're going to get an advantage coming into point 2 and 3. They need to make sure that the 449 isn't only happening against.
Yeah, let's see if they can get their momentum going and pushing on through here. Lord of Terrence here on the Farah, as you mentioned briefly here. We backed up by Alibi, and that's a lot of damage coming through, getting rid of the turret. An aggressive movement here from the tanks on the low ground here. Very aggressive from Trigger Happy. He's going to move on through. Can he get rid of that Torbjorn? Not quite with the damage. Echo finds it. Great work from Lord of Terrence. Gets the first direct second on the wall to get rid of the enemy DPS, and he finds the mech as well. So Terran Lord on this Farah, a key to opening up the defense so far at least. Ooh, very early. Oh my god, that is a triple kill, as clean as you like. Terran Lord making space for his team, taking it all into his own hands and allowing the Prideful Shifters to push on through to first point.
And I'm really happy to be seeing them play a little bit harder commitment, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more high damage, high reward, and that kind of thing. High risk playstyle that, the enemy team has been baiting them playing into. They've called their bluff. They said, okay, we think we can do it better than you can defend it. And that's what's happening here. They can do it better. Terran can get the damage out on this Farah. And Clumsy can get the damage out on this Hanzo. Pretz can get the brawl out. And that's very much the story of the Prideful Shifters. They're now playing aggressive. They're now playing strong. And a huge shadow coming out from Pretz there.
Absolutely huge. And it's going to secure them a triple for Little Clumsy here on the Hanzo. He's going to pick up another. Yeah, you need to climb over the wall before you take the shot. And he does just that. Is he going to get the pick? Is he going to get taken down? Who knows what's going to happen here? He gets taken down. That's dynamite. Unfair advantage. Yeah, that wasn't a true duel. And Little Clumsy, Alibi, going to make sure that the balance is restored there as he brings Little Clumsy back to life.
I'm actually quite surprised Alibi didn't take that into his own hands and pull out the pistol and go for the kill. But
Same, yeah.
you know what? You know what? It's good patience from Alibi. He knows he'll get his chance. He knows he's going to get the chance at revenge.
Absolutely. Trigger Happy has the ultimate here, the minefield. Little Clumsy again with the opening pick. The DPS on the Prideful Shift is doing such a good job of getting these early picks on the Grand Hindenburg. And the Grand Hindenburgs are scramming a little bit, Blur.
Yeah, at this point it very much looks like they're not sure how to deal with this because they're not dealing with Terran. They're not able to. And again, another big barrage coming out, getting a huge value pick there.
Mine's over the top as well. It's not the one, it's the other. But again, it's Terran Lord doing all the damage for his team, or at least getting all the kills for his team. Of course, the tanks are doing a great job on this map, making space. And the disruption coming out of Trigger Happy has been pretty significant as well, Blur.
Yeah, I actually thought this would be a little bit of a kind of a strategy comp for the Prideful Shifters. This wrecking enough time to try and go for an early pick, and then they'd probably switch off it. But the momentum has been such in their favor that they actually have 5 minutes on the clock here. 5 minutes to push this third point. That's a very, very big time bank, and one that they hopefully can make count. Show that they're more than the mistakes they've made in the past here, and really start to put their stamp on this game. Put a bit of a stamp on authority. Say that, you know, we feel we're the better team, and we're going to show it.
Oh, Terran Lord brought back to life here. He's going to try and show that he's the better player here. It's DPS on DPS action, although, to be honest, the Ash isn't looking at him. Little Clumsy finds the pick at the end, and still looking so good for the Prideful Shifters. Little Clumsy versus the Zlade on the Un. Another hero we see him play very often, but okay, now, finally, the tanks on the side of the Grand Hindenburgs waking up a little bit on the defense and finding a few picks. Bubbles picks up a triple on the Diva, and Sully on the front line here finds Little Clumsy. Gonna get Pretz as well in a matter of moments, I'm sure. Actually finds Trigger Happy. Get down, Mr. President, and Pretz finally gonna hit the deck here. But the Grand Hindenburgs, as they start spazzing out on the point here, the Grand Hindenburgs finally able to stop the bleeding a little bit.
I'm not sure if that's the nicest way to express that, but yeah. Yeah, they've now got into a position of relative stability. They're in a position now where they, you know, have a nice position to hold on to. They can hold this high ground. They're going to force the side of the Prideful Shifters to have to play a little bit strangely against us, uncomfortably even. And with the May here, with the Rissa here, Trigger Happy's going to struggle to find that same disruption he's been finding on the first 2 points. And maybe it's time to consider a switch for that, but he does have that minefield online that could prove impactful in this fight.
He does indeed, but the Bob doing disruption of its own here. Shatter comes down, not sure how many it hit there for Pretz, but they do get rid of that Bob in short order, making sure it doesn't get too much value. Sully though finds the pick onto Little Clumsy, so it's DPS down here. That charge, if the wall hadn't been there, he would have taken the Diva out, I'm sure of it. But unfortunately, that's not how Overwatch works. And Lord of Terrans, though he did find the pick onto the May, who is brought back to life. Why is there a Mercy in your backline and a May? You should probably deal with this before you start moving forward. These are easy kills, and the May is taking down the turret, doing the heavy lifting there once again. Torbjorn, the Terran Lord, sorry, coming up to his molten core. He commits it there on the front line as Alibi throws balls from the back line. It's action all over the place here, but at the end of the day, it's blue in the kill feed. Trigger Happy picks himself up a double kill on the front line. That self-destruct gonna buy a little bit of space. Is he gonna get that kill? He actually does. He gets Lord of Terrans down, and that could end up being quite a problem for this push because the spawns are gonna come through again. If they get rid of the spawn, I think that could be huge, and this Dragon Strike could be big going into spawn. Yeah, Ash going down straight away. Little Clumsy picks up his second, and Pretz is looking healthy here on the front line. The minefield as well, making it so difficult for the Grand Hindenburgs to push on through, and the Prideful Shifters may well... Pretz, there's people on the point. You got to deal with him. Okay. The Grand Hindenburgs forced back, and the Prideful Shifters making Blur eat his words.
Oh, well, you know, there's people on the point that he has to deal with, but there's also people in the spawn that he has to deal with. He is a Reinhardt player. That is what he does.
Oh, kill them before they respawn.
kill them before they're at the point. Who cares about the point, the objective? You have 5 people behind you for it.
Exactly, it's not my problem.
But yeah, looking at that game, that's really functionally way better play from the Prideful Shifters there. Showing that little bit of aggression, getting into that nice position that they've really struggled to actually show in this game so far. And Lord of Terran, you see on this Pharah here, he is able to produce so much in this game. They've now spread their wings. They've decided they don't want to play this little turtle strategy anymore. This really like defensive play style. They don't want to worry about patient play and build up and this kind of like poking play. They want to be full aggressive. They want to be spamming down the team. They want to be getting into the position to win themselves the game by giving themselves such a supreme advantage that they can't possibly lose with the condition they've specified for themselves. Absolutely. So coming into this, yeah.
credit as well, to them for switching it up at the end as well. The Pharaoh was getting such good value, but Terran recognizing that he felt like he could actually get more value on the Torbjorn there, and it seemed to work out really well in their favor, giving them that 7-man in the form of the turret, of course, and building him up to a couple of critical molten cores. Credit as well to Little Clumsy on the Hanzo. He wasn't, popping off in the kill feed as much as Terranord was, but contributing significantly in a lot of occasions, and that Dragon Strike towards the end, critical to securing them a quick 3rd-point cap in a position where we've seen them get stalled out for long periods of time.
Yeah, and I mean, this is it's a bit of a stylistic shift from the side of Prideful shifters. They've decided to shift away from a little bit of a style that's all encompassingly, uniform. And they've switched towards, they've pulled the pharmacy with the Reinhardts, which decentralizes their damage. They're not matching their tanks. They're making sure they can maintain aggression and disruption. They're playing poorly matched supports because they want to make certain things work. And you know what? They've achieved a win condition here that we haven't seen them achieve since we've been watching them. And now they've put themselves in a really, really good position to actually put themselves in the semi-finals.
Absolutely. Match point.
One more map. That's all they need to do. And it's going to be Hanamura.
Exactly. Match point here for the Prideful Shifters. They win this one. They are through to the semi-finals. And if we remember back to the match we saw before this one against Need for Feed, they ended up taking Hanamura. That was one of the critical maps that they ended up forcing us to a map 5. So let's shift gears a little bit here, if we could, Blair, and think about the Grant Hindenburgs. What do they need to do now to respond to the Prideful Shifters, and what mistakes have they been making that's put them on the back foot after Dorado?
I think a lot of the things we've criticized the Prideful Shifters for, the Grant Hindenburgs were also responsible for in that game. They were coming out, they were trickling onto point, they were trickling into the fights where they really shouldn't have. They should have been playing a lot more defensive, a lot more together, and especially once they saw that they were running a very strange comp, they need to try and be extending the fights. We talked so much about how they turtled on King's Row and made the fights very slow, and I was expecting to see something similar where they play some entry denial, where they possibly back off that high ground early and hold that bridge, and they hold it very slow and very, give their DPS time to look for those picks. But they ended up switching that kind of playstyle out, and they played a little bit more aggressively on the defense, which represents a little bit of a shift to their playstyle. So I'm thinking, from what we've seen, we maybe need to see them dial it back a little bit. They need to be back doing the thing that got them to this point. They need to be, playing a very nice aggressive attack, which they know they can go toe-to-toe with the Prideful Shifters on, and they need to be playing a very capable slow defense to make sure that they get absolute maximum time to make sure that they're able to win out the game at the end of it.
Well, it seems like they're doing a kind of mixed attack here. They got the bubbles on the ball to get aggressive for the Grant Hindenburgs, but they are running kind of some slow DPS, so not quite what you were looking for out of them, Blur, but still have an opportunity to get something done on the first point.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the other side here, I think their DPS match up quite nicely. The Ashe and the McCree are going to be quite poke intensive, and on the side of the Prideful Shifters, you've got the Mei and the Torbjorn, which is going to be very, very slow and very difficult to actually get consistent damage out of if they stay at the range that they want to be playing at.
Ooh. So
as I say that, eating my words.
Yeah, which one? Are you sure you're looking at the right teams, Blair? One getting the long-range picks, much like he's been doing all game long so far. Lime Earth for a little sneaky angle here. He gets a shot actually onto the enemy Mei, but he's not going to find anything more than that, I don't think. Sully dropping low on the front line. Needs to be careful not to get taken down. And the Prideful Shifters need to be careful not to give too much space to the Grant Hindenburgs. But so far they've been doing a good job of keeping them in the choke. Or Little Clumsy deciding where they wants to commit the wall here. He's actually just going to hold it. And this is great for the Prideful Shifters.
Yeah, this is really good. They're building. That's the same thing we've been saying of them on the Hanamura versus Need for Feed. They played nice and slow. They established an advantage, and they built up a lot of ults. So they just need to keep doing that and keep putting in this advantage that they're gaining again in this fight.
More time off the clock here for the Grant Hindenburgs. Vertigo managed to build up a very quick nano boost there actually, and ended up using it, but not quite able to get the effect. And you see now compositional philosophy totally switching for the Grant Hindenburgs. This is more what you were looking for out of them.
This is actually very strange from them because I thought their composition again was actually fine. It was their playstyle here that was wrong. They needed to be giving their DPS time to do the damage here, time to against the composition of the Prideful shifters. They needed to be giving their team a little bit of opportunity to do what they were trying to achieve, and they haven't done that now. They've completely switched it up.
Oh, that's a big shatter. Pritz found the angle, he found the shatter onto Bubbles here, who has switched onto that Reinhardt. Bomb going through, Trigger Happy gets his requisite kill as we expect him to by now, but Little Clumsy does end up dropping. Spawns, of course, favoring the attackers, so Grant Hindenburgs will be happy with any kills they can get on the way out here.
Yeah, and from the Grant Hindenburgs now, it looks like a little bit of a panic strategy. Playing this Wrecking Ball to try and pull them back to points and then trying to push aggressively with this largely otherwise coherent brawl comp. You know, you've got a very mashing brawl comp and a very weird pick with the off tank. And from the side of the Prideful shifters, all they have to do is back up, play it slowly. There's nothing they really need to defend against.
Yeah, absolutely not. Pushing forward here, Sully, though, making it very difficult for them to play how they want to play on the side of the Prideful shifters. And in fact, Terran Lord going down, and he's been critical to this team's success so far. Frozen up, though, Little Clumsy. That sound barrier, oh my god, that boop might have actually, I think that boop just kept Soul Eater alive there because they couldn't get the kill. Pritz straight on through, gets the kill onto Bubbles, gets another onto Lime Oros, taking matters into his own hands. That said, Slade did pick off the enemy May, and the enemy Diva dropped as well, again courtesy of Slade. So this Lucio putting in the work. Oh, that charge just not managing to connect on the enemy May in time before the Lord of Terror is managing to keep himself on the point here. The Blizzard committed. He's going to get frozen up just in the nick of time before he can punch his way out of that. And Sully picks up a double, assisted in in large part due to that Blizzard. So this fight was really drawn out, Blow. We've mentioned losing slowly a couple of times, and that right there was the epitome of that.
Yeah, and I mean, here again, you should be happy with that if you're the Prideful shifter. 30 seconds left on the clock, and they're coming in a little bit too aggressively for what you would expect an attacking team on point 2 CP to be doing. You know, Sully getting Bubbles getting very separated from his team and not being punished for it, but you know, there was the risk of it. And you know, there's still no ults they need to defend against. There's no kind of pure defensive ult necessity. So again, they're swapping into this double like heal sustain or this double sustain healing composition, and you know, that might be a good shift. So just making sure they stabilize those fights that get a little bit messy, they get a little bit ults all over the place, and because that has been something they struggled with.
Little Clumsy burned to death there. Unfortunately, Sully is coming in with the tickle damage there to make sure he secures that kill. They're on point now, are the Grant Hindenburgs, and they've picked off the turret at least, and maybe a little bit more. Sound barrier even committed here. I'm watching the May come back to the fight on my second screen, so they're not up at a full complement, but they're getting all the kills that they need here on the point. That May walk, the block, gonna stall things out a little bit, but these mines are so difficult to deal with, and Little Clumsy dies straight away after the ice block ends. Mine's going the other way now, though, and Pritz going to try and secure the space and time for his team to come through. They have got a tick now, or Bubbles, he's right outside the spawn. I like the idea, but he does end up playing with his life. Sully doing the same thing, but they're walking right past him and onto the point. Bubbles has hit the deck as we saw, but Slade going to make sure Lord of Terrence doesn't get any more value out of the Doomfist on this life. All Sully taking a brief nap there, but the freeze ray going to wake him up pretty much straight away. But this is taking too long from the Grant Hindenburgs, and the spawns are coming in now. Pritz finds the kill onto Soul Eater, and we're almost up back to a full 6-man complement. You know, the exception being Little Clumsy, who just goes down. But yeah, I think they haven't done this quickly enough. And Bubbles finds a kill. Maybe I spoke too soon here. Maybe I spoke too soon for real this time, as Bubbles picks up his second kill of the team fight, and Peach obfuscates my vision there briefly. I saw that. Unfortunately, though, there's still heroes coming in. This is the epitome, again, of losing slowly. Grant Hindenburg struggling to clean things up here to finish it off. Lord of Terrence now back in the mix, gets rid of the enemy Reinhardt, but he's not on the point. It's just a sliver left, but there's 4 blue players on the point, and Lord of Terrence is now uncontested and nano boosted up, and he's just going to punch himself back up to a point stabilization here.
And that's actually really, really well played from the Prideful shifters there. They took such a massive disadvantage in the early stage of that fight from the amounts of ultimates that were used in that fight. But just through good stalling, one at a time, good control of the points, and good tactical disassembly of the resources that they were struggling against, they put that fight back into even terms. And now, 40 seconds left on the clock. They can win with 2.5 minutes or 3.5 minutes. You know, that's an absolutely fantastic way to win a fight. Although they gave up 2 ticks along the way.
One team fight blow all that time. Little Clumsy though gets the first pick onto the enemy Ash. Lime Oros gonna have to come back from spawn as quick as he can. This Lord of Terrans, man, he's doing such a good job of making himself be the target that needs to be focused on. The point is ticking up slowly here, almost getting that complete cap. Just a little bit left, but the kills are all blue, and that's it's really bad for the attacking team when all your players are dying and you don't have the spawn advantage. And it looks like after all that, the red team is going to struggle with that pulse bomb and the punch. Going to make sure Bubbles can push any thoughts of reaching the point out of his mind and think about the inside of the spawn and how that looks. As we watch the Lucio here, just making a little bit of space, just buying a little bit more time for Sully to get back in here, and he does do just that. There's Doomfist now as well. Soul Eater gonna try and make something happen, but the better Doomfist prevails here, you'd have to think, as Lord of Terrors makes sure that he can't get any value. Trigger Happy, find the kill onto Vertigo. Can he find anything more? He's looking at trying to get the Reinhardt down. He doesn't do so. Pritz nanoed up. It's just Sully left on the point. They need to watch the... Oh, what a sleep! Vertigo, that was crazy. Can they find the last few kills? Or rather, not Vertigo, that was Alibi. Apologies. Lord of Terrans, though, punching his way here. EQZA with the last couple of picks. And it looks like finally, after the longest team fight I've seen in a while, the Grant Hindenburgs are pushed back on second point.
I mean, that's very much the story of what we needed to see out of the Prideful shift. We needed to see them be able to stabilize their fights, be able to stem the tide when they're losing, and be able to put together their resources and come back and take a fight. And that's what we've seen. They were really good on Hanamura against against Need for Feed, and they're really good now against the Grant Hindenburgs. And it's a position now where you would assume that, given how they played against Need for Feed, that they're going to take a similar approach against the Grant Hindenburgs here. They're going to be playing, this nice aggressive attack. They're going to be playing off heroes they're familiar with and heroes they want to really double up on their proficiencies with. And considering the value we've seen them getting out of their DPS in this game, I wouldn't say they would be leaning on necessarily winning a macro fight. They're looking at winning those individual duels. They're looking at winning those little 1v1s that you maybe you hedge them, winning it on that advantage and putting themselves into a position that really is unassailable for the Grant Hindenburgs on point. 95.5% is all they need to send themselves to the semi-finals on point 2. And you're looking at Little Clumsy on that Genji and Lord of Terran on that Echo to send them there.
Yeah, absolutely. That said, they've got a little bit of a range to deal with. They've got a Bastion and a May and a couple of other heroes here as a supporting cast, a double shield. Let's see how this works. They're set up straight on point, and all it's going to take is one big out combination from the Prideful Shifters to unseat what the Grant Hindenburgs have set up here. But so far, they're just trying to get set up, trying to think about how they want to purchase one. Terran Lord with the riskiest movement I've ever seen, almost gets himself deleted off the face of the planet here. But he is finding a nice angle. Little Clumsy, this isn't his first game. Lime Oros not going to fall for the deflect kill, as we've seen a few others do before. But yeah, team's just moving into position here. Patient play out of Prideful Shifters.
And this is really smart play from the Prideful Shifters, taking up space around, taking up too many angles for them to block. And, we've seen this before. We've seen this type of playstyle before. We saw it yesterday, where against this very entrenched bunker, you just need to play it slow. You need to force the mistake out of them, and you need to basically build up the ults and get ready to breach them. And, as it's going here, it's just going to be a slow push onto point, a slow push to try and take the advantage over time.
The slowest of slow pushes, Blur. Nothing is happening. Patience personified here from the Prideful Shifters. And so far, they haven't really been able to do anything. And they're charging the ultis pretty slowly. It's been a minute and a half, and they haven't really found any angles yet. Haven't been able to crack through the defense that are put up. That charge, though, nope, ill-fated to say the least. Lime Oros finds another one across the map onto Lord of Terrans, as we just saw. And Prideful Shifters, you have to go back here and think about how they want to approach this one. How do you approach this one, Blair?
I think, you're looking at this and you're thinking, we need to bait out, if they're going to use ults like that, we need to bait out into defensive positions and be able to get out. I would be switching the composition. I'd be saying, we probably need to switch our tank slightly, and we probably need to switch our second DPS to a bit of a long-range DPS. But I think they're just going to hedge on winning this through absolute ult supremacy here. And maybe that's what they need.
Yeah, maybe it is what they need. It's a pretty good strategy, but doing the coalescence like that is not a good start. Adaptive strikes come out. I think he was nanoed as well. I think this guy's blew twice. Oh, the shadow did end up landing. I'm not sure, and he gets charged straight out. Lime Uros not dealt with and doing the damage. As I say that, though, the blade finally comes in, but it's too little, too late. The Grant Hindenburgs have stabilized here, and that's 2.5 minutes, Blur, that the Prideful Shifters have just wasted.
Well, if they get back here quickly, if they regroup quickly, they can take a 5v4 here. They can be there before the Bastion's back, and they could possibly take this in a position that the Grant Hindenburgs won't be ready for. But they really need to be considering how they're taking this fight, because they're giving the Grant Hindenburgs so much space to do their nonsense, so much space to just sit there with that Bastion strat and really punish them for what they're doing.
Oh, Amp Matrix committed here. Lord of Tenants. Okay, that's the perfect initiation. They caught him on the way in. The Mercy coming in. Wait, no, I changed my mind. Never mind. Please don't hurt me. She gets out safely, but not going to be able to bring the Bastion back alive. But he's not really even needed here on the side of the Grant Hindenburgs. They're going to win sans Lime Oros and just fight this one out without the Bastion, who's, as you can see, still on his way back. Really great fight from the Grant Hindenburgs.
And worth noting here, Pretz has done it again. Pretz has sent himself off the map with bubbles when his team needed him. Come on, Pretz. I've taught you better than this.
Is Bubbles back in the mix yet, or is he still coming back?
Bubbles is back in the mix now, yes.
Okay, never mind, I guess, yeah. There's no... nothing, no resolving that. Oh, here comes Trigger Happy's ulti in that May wall. Looks pretty good. Oh, Pretz with a triple kill. I'm guessing he charged in there and just started swinging. I think they'd all taken damage from the self-destruct. The only thing keeping them alive was the lamp, and once that went down, Pretz could collect himself a few heads and secure the Prideful Shifters the first point cap.
And that is the absolute sweatiest point take I've seen from the Prideful Shifters in this entire tournament so far. They threw a Diva Bomb and hoped, and then they threw a Reinhardt and hoped, and then it worked.
According to plan.
All according to plan. But coming into this next fight, 5 ults online for the Prideful Shifters. This is the fight. If they're going to win any fights on this attack, it's going to be here. They have their Riptire, they have their Duplicate, they have their Coalescence. It's time for them to show what they can do.
They baited out the lamp nice and early. Terranord decides he wants to be a Bastion. Bubbles decides he's not having any of that. He charges him straight on through, but he pays for it with his life, actually, and that could be a pretty significant pick here, as Little Clumsy is nano boosted up. Oh no, Vertigo. Oh no, okay. The Valkyrie enough to keep her alive and allow her to exit that without giving her own life away. And he spoke about how that was the best fight for the Prideful Shifters to win, but it looks like we're going to have to try for another one.
Yeah, I can't say that I'm especially impressed by how they ended up taking that fight. I also can't say I'm especially surprised to see that the Grant Hindenburgs were able to retain that advantage based on the fact that they were just left with the Bastion on high ground. What did they expect to happen? The Bastion's going to sit there with his healer and just, you know, play his point and click adventure.
His point and click adventure, yeah.
It's not going to be a winnable fight for the Prideful Shifters if they leave that Bastion alive, and they have to do a better job of dealing with it. The Duplicates especially was particularly egregious in not dealing with him at all.
About as egregious as just feeding your life away, getting mowed down by picking a Bastion. I think both equally bad. I hear a Bastion ulti popped here. He's gonna do some sweet tech there, some jumps, but not really get much value in terms of actual damage here. So maybe a bit of a wasted ultimate, but that's not the world's most impactful ultimate in the best of times. That said, they do pick up both supports here, but I think they weren't really going to get more out of that team fight on the side of the Prideful Shifters anyways.
Yeah, it's just the Prideful Shifters don't seem to have a plan on engaging this fight. They have these ults online. Maybe they're just trying to tick away at the last ults they have, get as many online as they can before they engage, but they really need to stop losing picks before the fight starts. They need to stop putting themselves in positions where they absolutely have no chance of winning these fights, and start to think a little bit, how do we dismantle this comp? How do we put our resources in the position of maximum opportunity? And they seem to be looking for a similar solution that they had on point 1.
Well, Trigger Happy once again finds the kill that the team needs to get. That the Prideful Shifters now moving on to point. They haven't lost a single player. They are fighting into the Blizzard. As I say, that Pretz does get taken down. Adaptive Circuit's going to keep the Echo alive here, and it's going to be Lord of Terrans again, trying to get value as an enemy tank, and it's going to be pretty good here. They're getting the picks they need to. We spoke about at the beginning how they struggled to get the cleanups they need to as Press rejoins the fight on the Wrecking Ball, but this time the Prideful Shifters are doing a great job of preventing the Grant Hindenburgs from mustering and effective recontest here. As I say that though, they've got so many bodies on the point, but Little Clumsy making short work of Slade on the loose here. Can they find anything more with this Junkrat? Can they find anything more on the point? Remember, they have to win this team fight if they want to sign their ticket towards the semi-finals. I mean, right now, if they win, they still have an opportunity to win the next one. But you get what I'm saying is, Sally, the red team coming back in here. Grant Hindenburgs, the spawn advantage is too strong. The kills weren't coming quickly enough, and the Grant Hindenburgs are going to take us on to a map 5.
And I think what we're just seeing there is just a little bit of misuse of resources. Prideful Shift. They get into the fight, they get the picks, but they leave the Bastion alive long enough to pick off Pretz in that fight, and they don't have the res that's the Grant Hindenburgs have had, so they didn't have the means to get Pretz back into that fight quickly. So Pretz had to come back, lost the ult charge he had left, lost the kind of aggressive presence of a Reinhardt on points, because obviously the ideal is to have that Reinhardt there with that big amount of cleave damage, that big shield. And then they just stopped focusing the same targets. Sully was given so much room to actually just dismantle that team one by one. He absolutely tore apart their backline while the rest of the team were all sitting, shooting different things on point. And you have to think that if they'd been one after the other, they'd been like, okay, the Doomfist is coming out, now the Winston, now the Wrecking Ball, it would have been easier to clean up. It would have been easier to put them in a situation that they would have won. And coming into a map 5 here, although we favored them, or although they should be favored considering how they took the first control map, it does feel a little bit like history repeating itself. 2-2 coming into this last map, where the Prideful Shifters haven't quite managed to shake off the mistakes that we've seen them make.
Absolutely, history repeating itself here. I hope. Let me not say what I was going to say. I just hope Prideful Shifters put up a nice fight here and we get a good final chapter to this series of games. It's into a stressful series of games for the Prideful Shifters here as they make their way through to their second consecutive map 5. But the Grant Hindenburgs now, momentum is behind them. They're going to feel good about how they defended that one because they were on the back foot given that they weren't able to muster a second point push on their own attack. So I think they're going to be feeling pretty good coming into this, and they might be looking at taking this point off the Prideful Shifters. I think we saw how well the Prideful Shifters did on Lijiang Tower in the previous series, but like with Busan, which went the opposite way, it's going to depend on how they choose to play this, and if they can allow Little Clumsy and Terran Lord to get the value out of those DPS heroes.
Yeah, and I think it's very much going to be a case of stylistically, the Prideful Shifters playstyle does suit this this Lijiang Tower control map. I think maybe we're looking at a little bit of an advantage for the Grant Hindenburgs on the Lijiang Gardens map, but we saw how dominant they looked on the Night Market map, and we've seen how potent their brawl can be. So I think if Pretz and Co can get it going, can get on the same wavelength in terms of how aggressive they want to be brawling and the positions they want to be taking, they've got a kind of map favoring of 2-1, I would imagine. I think that they should be favored on those two maps. But
we did
looking
favor them in the previous series as well, though, coming into this. So
I mean, I'm happy to make that same mistake twice. I think that's that the team is strong enough that we should be expecting them to be playing strongly on these maps. The one map that they were weak on, the escort map, they showed that they can play strongly on, and then the one map that we expected them to be strong on, they kind of subverted our expectations there.
yeah,
So I'm like, I wouldn't say they necessarily attacked badly. They did get a lot of progress on point 2 there, but I think there was just a few too many little individual mistakes there for them to really clutch it out. But with a lower time intensive mode in terms of the control map, and in terms of something that suits them not being able to fall victim to niche strats as much. There's not enough time to set up those bastions. There's not enough really substantial map economy to work with when you're looking at there. So if they're going to set up some sort of bastion strat, they're going to have to do it immediately. I doubt they will even consider it, but the Prideful Shifters look like they have the dominance on most other comps at this point. So we'll see going forward whether they manage to make that dominance count or whether they they are able to take the initiative, but I think they should be favored here.
I think I agree with that assessment, but I wouldn't be surprised to be proved wrong once again about our analysis of the Prideful shifters. So we're just waiting for the teams to hop into the map here, and we'll be able to see what our first point is. But okay, give me a prediction, Blair. Give me a prediction. 2-1 to the Prideful shifters.
Let me see what map comes up first, and I'll give you a prediction. Garden, I think it's 2-1 to the Prideful Shift.
Okay, you think this map favors the Prideful shifters then?
I think this one favors the Grant Hindenburg. I think the aggressive dive and the amount of flanks they're going to be able to get off on this map favor them. But also, if Terran comes out on that Pharah and puts in that oppressive playstyle we've seen him pull off so successfully in the previous maps, might put him into a position to really take the dominance in this map.
Yeah, we saw how good they were on this map against Need for Feed. The map they ended up dropping was actually Control Center. So I'm feeling pretty good about the Prideful shifters here. So it's going to be up to the Grant Hindenburgs to prove us wrong, but we're seeing a lot of aggressive heroes here coming out of both teams. We see Lord of Terrans on the Pharah again, backed up by Alabi's Mercy. We see Clumsy on the Tracer, both dive tanks for the blue team. On the side of the Grant Hindenburgs, dive tanks as well, but choosing to run Sally on his trusty ball and running a Genji Tracer. How long has it been since we saw this? Not that long, but it does feel like it's been forever.
Yeah, I think from the side of the Prideful shifters here, we're seeing them try to put resources into this Pharah, but also try not to make their support on the ground too isolatable. And the same thing from Need for Feed. They're putting this Mercy Lucio so that they don't have to commit a lot of resources to healing. They want to play aggressive. They want to get in the fight aggressively, and they are already picking off EQZ early in this fight.
Oh, nice work from Soul Eater here as well, tracking down the Diva and getting rid of the mech. Oh, that Tracer needs to be careful not to get taken down as both tanks now hitting the deck for the Prideful shifters. So a great start from the Grant Hindenburgs, but they need to be careful not to throw it away here. They've lost 2 now in the mid fight and could end up losing a couple more if they're not careful, because they don't really have a great way of dealing with Terran Lord in the sky here, Blip.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a defining factor for this, is that the Prideful shifters need to last long enough in the team fights for Terran Lord to be effective. It's the asset that's the Grant Hindenburgs cannot counter. They have a real, like a severe weakness to this aerial threat of the Pharah here, and you know, again, we see a situation where Pretz, Little Clumsy and co all dying too quickly on the ground. Terran getting value, but it's not he's not able to make it count because everything is just dying too quickly and in too many split positions there.
Yeah, unfortunately not giving him the opportunity to leverage the damage that he is doing. He does have his ulti, and when you get rid of Slade like that in 2 shots, you've got to be feeling pretty good. Oh no, he recognized that the deflect came out but turned back. I don't know what he was thinking there, just decided he was going to die to the deflect anyways. Little Clumsy though finds the kill onto Bubble, so they are ahead in this team fight, but the sound barrier going to make it difficult for the Prideful shifters to move in here. Oh, he wants that Valking hero. That needs to be careful. Yeah, he actually trigger happy ends up going down, but he trades his life with Lime Oros. But in terms of HP, that's greatly favoring the Grant Hindenburgs. With Sully for the second fight in a row off the map all by himself. What's the story there? I didn't catch that one on stream, but that is very unfortunate for him. And it looks like they are going to be able to restabilize, are they? But this is in the Grant Hindenburg's favor. Lord of Terrans is back now on the trusty Echo, but he gets dropped pretty quickly as Bubbles picks up a double kill on the point. The Grant Hindenburg's up to 85%. Prideful shifters, the ball is in their court. They need to do something, and so far it's going the other way. All red in the kill feed once again as the Grant Hindenburg secure the kills they need to probably secure themselves the first point on Lijiang Tower, just as predicted by a guy who predicts things. What's his name?
I don't know. I'm not sure who you could be talking about in this scenario, but it does look like they're just struggling to clean up this fight, struggling to get onto this point and really focus down targets coherently. Like, they're all in different positions, they're all doing different things, and they're getting punished so severely for it. But maybe now is when they start to turn it around.
Yeah, double kill there for Clumsy and Pretz, managed to pick something up, but the res is going to even things out, and then the return kill onto EQZ is going to make it difficult for the Prideful shifters to pull it back together here. Little Clumsy on this Tracer. Oh, that's good tracking. Almost takes down the Lucio. There's Lade. Needs to watch his HP, but he's fine for now, and a difficult kill to get as Lord of Terrans has chosen to duplicate. Oh, there we go. He gets the minefield down now, and that could be key, actually. He could get another one even if they're not careful. Can they find the kills though? Oh, that's a pulse bomb, ladies and gentlemen. Soul Eater with the triple, gonna secure the Grant Hindenburgs the first point of Lee Jiangtao.
And I think Soul Eater must be giving major credit to Trigger Happy there for taking that pulse bomb straight into his team, absolutely making that opportunity possible. But you know, it's a situation where we saw the Prideful Shifters trying to get on there, and it's like they didn't have the proof of concept in their mind of what they were trying to achieve. In that situation, they needed to be playing it slow. They needed to be giving Terran the chance to get those picks. And he was getting those picks. But by the time he was getting those picks, it was after, you know, the team had fallen down. And you saw it from Pretz moving out of position, from EQ moving out of position, from Little Clumsy getting too aggressive. And they maybe need to just play a little bit more patient to get their opportunities sorted in this game.
Yeah, need to find a balance between hyper aggression and patience. Sometimes they're playing a little bit too patient, sometimes they're not playing patient enough. It's a difficult balance to strike, but one they're going to have to hit here as they teleport onto the point now, courtesy of Lord of Terrans on that Symmetra. So damage aplenty here for the Prideful Shifters, and it's up to the Grant Hindenburgs to weather the storm and find a way in. That's a big anti-heal. This damage is so much. Sully, though, being disruptive in the backline here as Bubbles moves on forward. A lot of damage coming through, but no kills, and the positioning clearly in favor of the blue team. But Bubbles found his way into the backline and wasn't dealt with, picked himself up a triple and buys the space for Lime Oros to just slash his way through, pick up a triple of his own, and that was all the Bubbles show.
And I mean, out of all the things you could hit with that very low percentage charge, the Symmetra was the absolute biggest threat that you could have taken out of that fight. The Symmetra absolutely crucial in the team composition that the Prideful Shifters are running, and taking her out of that fight meant that they weren't able to maintain that constant damage, win the slow fight that they wanted to be so active in.
Oh, almost flipping the point for free here, though. Yeah, they do actually do so. So now we're playing on the Prideful Shifters time, and they'll be happy to draw this one out, even if they don't end up winning the team fight. Shadow committed here. Yes, he does. That's a nano boosted. He missed. Okay, apparently it looked like he hit him, but Bubbles just disappeared, and now all of a sudden everything's unraveling for the Prideful Shifters. They managed to get a flip and tick up to 23%, but the Grant Hindenburgs take an emphatic team fight victory to follow up.
And that's, you know, Bubbles showing off at the end of that fight with a little bit of the squad exercises that we've become so accustomed to in the local Overwatch scene. And, you know, why shouldn't he? They're playing a really good round so far, and he's landed some really important charges and chassis in this game to this point.
Yeah, he absolutely has. This has been all the Bubble show on this point. Terran Lord gets the pick, and a second one followed up here from the man himself going down at the end of the day. So finally, it looks like the Prideful Shifters have hit their stride on Night Market and are going to be able to secure some kills. But maybe I spoke too soon here. Lots of players low. Pretz does secure the kill onto the enemy Ana, but it might not be enough to secure them the point if they don't deal with this enemy ball. Bubbles comes back in with another huge shatter, but the follow-up isn't there. He finds a couple. Yes, it is. Lime, Oros, and Bubbles once again mixing up, cleaning up, and sending the Prideful Shifters packing.
And again, it's just, you know, it's a case of the Shifters not effectively dealing with the threats that they're faced with in the later fight. You know, if they cleaned up that fight and they got into a position that they would be favored in. No, again.
Trigger Happy just all by himself out there, gets charged down by Bubbles once again, and that gives Grant Hindenburgs a one-man advantage in this team fight. I heard a Blizzard go down and saw nobody die, so that's not a good start for Little Clumsy and his team. But the Grant Hindenburgs are in the driver's seat now. They picked up a quick triple, make that 4, make that 5, and with this guy frozen up, it's about to be 6, and that's going to spell the end of the road for the Prideful Shifters. The Grant Hindenburgs, after a slow start to the series, have shown the Prideful Shifters how it's done, and history repeats itself as the Prideful Shifters drop the last map 2-0 after winning the first map in such a dominant fashion.
And it's just the same situation coming out again, that, you know, they just aren't able to get that, smooth out their mistakes, to put themselves in a position that they really should be putting themselves in based on the resources available to them. And then they end up in situations like this, where they don't deal with the threat behind them. And, you know, Bubbles is able to deliver such a strong play here. You know, the shadow there just for a little bit of extra star power on top of that, extra little bit of glitter,
That was great. That was Bubbles not finally showing up, but really exploding in the last round and reminding us of his skill on that main tank. Overshadowed by Sully, which is, you have to say, not that surprising given Sully's expertise on the main tank. But that last map was all the Bubbles showing. That was awesome to see. But the question remains, Blur, whose show was it overall?
I mean, if the prideful shifters had won this game, I would have said it was the Lord of Terran show, But that last map, he could only do so much, and the way the team was structured around it didn't really lend itself to him performing in that game. We saw him have to switch onto the Echo to try and get some more aggressive kind of damage out in the mid fight to try and put his team in a position to win Gardens and to try and stem the tide of the Grant Hindenburg's aggression. And I think it's that aggression that we really have to talk about in terms of what defined this match and what really made this match possible. And I think if we're looking at that, again, we're looking at the tanks on the side of the Grant Hindenburgs, or we're looking at the supports there. And I'm thinking, honestly, given the dominant performance he put out in that last little bit of the game, Bubbles has to be high up in our consideration for our player of the match.
Recency bias at play. Hey, after that display on that last map, I'm perfectly happy to have a conversation with Bubbles for sure. So I think you not really that many. What am I trying to say here? Not a huge standout performance from the Grant Hindenburgs. I think somebody like Terran Lord on the Prideful Shifters really stood out as a stellar performer. Pretz as well, I think, for all the guff we give him, performed well today in general. But yeah, Bubbles, I think, standout performer, and happy to get some thoughts from him. Is he gonna join us? Peach is gonna drag him up.
I think we join him.
No. You just pull him mid-sentence. Other results that have come through in the meanwhile, as I click the wrong button and lose my page. Okay, so it looks like Need for Feed 3-0 Hammers kill, which is about what we expected given the relative strengths of those teams. 7-11 actually do beat the Teabaggers, who were Restless, Roofle, whatever their name is. And that actually really shakes up Group A. It could end up being a three-way tie. They will have to pass the results of that one. And then Lunatic Hello take a 3-2 victory over Angang. So that actually, I think that decides Group A, because if they beat them, they ended up with the best map differential. I mean, the best win rate of those teams. So we'll have to work it out. But before we do any of that stuff, we've got Mr. Bubbles here with us.
Hello.
Congratulations on the victory, a hard-fought victory.
Thank you.
Guys,
we did it for Grant. 100% did.
Absolutely, and now we get
All
to
the
see
way.
him play tomorrow. Which is
Hell yeah, dude. You know Grant had a date tomorrow, and now he's gonna cancel his date so he can play with us.
Cancel it. You can't.
Oh,
it's
dude,
only
yeah.
Women.
No. I mean, I get it. You pick the important things in your life, and in this case, it's Overwatch in a tournament that has no prize pool and anything but a rainbow-colored role on offer.
100%, dude.
I said Overwatch over women. That's not what I meant. I mean Overwatch over your partner.
Overwatch over anything
Nice
else, basically.
one. Very clean. Very on brand.
Male, female, whatever it is, Overwatch is worth more than them sometimes.
Oh yeah, dude.
So, Bubbles, talk to us about how you're feeling after that match and the vibe.
Dude, I am so hyped, dude. It's the most fun. We're just absolutely just having a blast. It's we're making calls, we're playing characters and compositions that we wouldn't play in like normal comp or in ATK or whatever. It's just so fun. Zlade is going ham on the Lucio. Sully and I are both very comfortable on tank. I'm really excited for when Grant comes back tomorrow.
Yeah. We're looking forward to seeing you guys play tomorrow.
Yeah.
When we're looking at the two teams, the way they laid out, there's a little bit of a apprentice versus coach kind of look to the two teams. You've got you and Pretz on one team, and you've got Soul Eater and Terran, who former coach of the old Neon Retribution squad, and
Yeah.
you know, it's a little bit of a display of a couple of players who really are starting to take this opportunity to shine and starting to show what they can do in this tournament. So coming to this, obviously a really important game. How did you approach that kind of bridging the gap with Pretz and Terran, and like coming up against people that you take a lot of advice from and you take a lot of kind of feedback from on the regular? How did you adapt that into being able to come out with such a dominant display today?
Well, basically, we said that we were gonna make sure that we always played our best. Like we were basically hard focusing Pretz majority of the time, because he was very in our face. He did end up charging me off the map, which is like sort of a him thing to do. But yeah, we sort of just played our normal game. As I like to say, just click heads, forehead. Yeah.
Great advice there. So, coming up tomorrow, we can confirm that it is going to be Lunatic Hello versus the Grant Hindenburgs and
Oh, hell yeah,
15
dude.
versus 7-Eleven. So, who's on that Lunatic Hello squad? Do you know?
That's 9 and not. That squad is team 1.
Yes, so
Okay.
Bubbles, Ugly Boy Adam, Not 9, Kit Kat, Shimada only. How do you guys feel going up against? Well, I guess we can only ask you, Bubbles. How do you feel going up against that squad?
I know for a fact that if Bubbles is on Lunatic Hello, then I'm gonna have to bring my A game, because there's been a nickname going around where apparently I'm fake Bubbles, but that's not true. Yeah, no. I'm real Bubbles. I'm real Bubbles, 100%.
I'm the arbiter of these things.
We'll do
That
it.
is the best. That is the best.
Yeah.
We'll probably
the
not
best man,
cast that, because I don't want to cast a game where it's Bubbles versus Bubbles. Well, you guys will have to make the finals for us to see you again.
Remember, son, you're not
Absolutely.
casting the semi-final, so we can cast that one still.
Oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
That's true. I didn't make the decision.
Unfortunate. Oh.
Any questions from you, Blake? Last?
Well, so you're heading now into a stage of the tournament where, you know, it's do or die. And, this match was your first do or die moment in this tournament, where, you know, you're very much looking at a situation where if you lost this match, it was over for you guys. And how do you keep that mentality up? How are you aiming to keep that kind of like, you know, let's keep it positive, let's keep it you know, let's keep it constructive, and let's keep our heads on our performance when things might be going against you tomorrow, or may have been going against you in today's game?
What we think of is we always just take it one game at a time. So we focus like really hard in each game, and then as soon as a map is done, we completely forget about it. We relax. Grant, when Grant was still with us at the first few games, he would do these hype speeches. He was a very hype person. And this game, we've been trying to like live up to the hype, and like Zlade tried to give us a speech. I had to give a speech at one point. Basically, speeches have been keeping us going. We've been focusing on our comps a lot, but not really like try-hard comping. The only try-hard comp we did was that Hanamura one, because we didn't want it to end there. But yeah, I mean, they picked a Brig, so.
Well, I mean, you can't argue with the results of that particular composition. So, will be you guys facing up against Lunatic Hello. But before we bid you adieu, Bubbles, where can we keep up with you on the internet?
Me? Oh, that would be Bubbles_69 he on Twitter and Twitch, and yeah, I think that's like everywhere that I am.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Cool. That's where we can find Bubbles for all your Reinhardt action.
Thank you.
Myself, I've been Sun Phoenix at Sun Phoenix on Twitter, SUNPHEONYX. And then we've got Blur. Where can we find you?
It's Blur_RSA, which I've remembered correctly this time.
Learned it finally. That's so you can find Blur and Peach, of course, at the Peach Today on Twitch and on Twitter. So before we sign off for realsies this time, just to remind you guys that tomorrow we have our semi-finals and our grand finals happening. Semi-finals at 5 o'clock. Going to be brought to you by your man here, Mr. Blur. And we'll have to see if he wants to cast Bubbles and Co. We'll let you guys know tomorrow exactly which of the two semifinals we'll be bringing your way, and Altruism will be joining him. And for the grand finals, you've got myself and Naori Mizuki, a classic combo for the ages, and we're going to bring you the grand finals. So hopefully we'll get to see Bubble again and Grant Hines on the main stage, so to speak. But whatever happens, I'm sure it's going to be awesome. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
I'm losing myself tonight. Losing myself, I'm losing myself I'm losing myself.
Za uwe fruik ni maya nifta bang ting mikunting nari Pampaya katos ake akatos ekon talana weruta asi Za uwe fruik